Can you all hear me? Are the microphones? Really? Okay. We do have a microphone issue, so and they're not great. So please bear with us. If you can't hear, you can maybe raise your hand or something, and we'll try and speak louder. But what also helps is please don't speak to your neighbor, because then others can't hear. So if you can do that, we'd appreciate it. The other thing is, don't forget to turn your electronic devices off or on mute or airplane mode so that it's not interrupting. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And we're first order of business, as is usual and customary, established by former Mayor Cheryl Fisher. We will stand, and please join me and say Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, welcome, and thank you all for coming. This is a special evening, special presentation and recognition of former Mayor Fisher. First, I'd like to make some introductions. To my left is Councilmember Patricia Thole, Councilmember Mark Vanderlinde, Councilmember Pamela Mortensen, and Councilmember Bob Christians. And next to Mr. Christians is our city engineer, Paul Hornby. Next to me on my right is our city administrator, our brand new appointed city administrator, Mike Baroni. Next to him is our finance director, Brian Grimm. And next to him is our Community Development Authority. It's because he always was our planner. So now I have to think a new title. Anyway, David Abel. And next to him is our city attorney, Ron Beatty. And then Paul Falls, our chief of police. With that, approval of our agenda, what I'd like to do is just move special presentations up prior to persons to be heard. And I'd also like to move the order around and just do special presentations would be order number 2, and it would be recognition of Cheryl Fisher, and then Mr. Lang for the LMCD. Other than that, staff, do we have any other additions for the agenda?
I don't think so, Mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion has been made to approve the agenda with those changes. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. So next we have our special presentation. What I'd like to do, if I could, is stand in the front here. Thank you. We have several dignitaries, if you will, in the audience today. We want to thank you all for coming. Just a kind of recognizing a couple of people. There is a past mayor, Mayor Gabriel Jabor, past mayor of Orono. And I'm looking around and hoping I'm not going to forget anybody, but we also have a past council member, Ron Klein. And we have two former police chief, David Cole. And also out in the hallway there, our former city clerk, Terry Harstad. And then we have former administrator, Dean Lauder. Former administrator, Mike Funk. And then, of course, we have planning commissioners and park commissioners. If you could just stand so I don't have to remember all your names, although I could. Just planning commissioners, we have Laura, we have Thank you all for coming. What I've asked is, Dean Lauder, I've asked the former leaders who work with Cheryl, and they work with Cheryl very closely as the mayor, of course. And so I've asked them to come forward and say a few words. And I think what we'll do is we'll start out with Mr. Lauder. If you would come forward and say a few things. And you have to speak loud so everybody can hear you.
We know each other well enough to know that that's never been a problem. Madam Mayor, thank you for the time. Members of the council, it's a privilege to come before you and to just have an opportunity to express a few things about former Mayor Cheryl Fisher. You want me up here? Well, sure. I didn't know. Oh, you wanted this up. But this is a real honor and a real privilege. Cheryl, you are one of the most impactful elected officials that I've worked with in my career. I've been either an administrator or a city manager now for about 18 years, and I've worked with a lot of different elected officials at all different levels of government. And I think back to you and our conversations and the meetings that we had throughout the years. At times you provided so much support for me. There were times where I didn't always have the confidence that I maybe needed in a particular situation, and you never backed away from me. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful for the impact you had on my career. I appreciated all the things that I learned from you. I learned how to be patient. I learned how to kind of let things kind of cook a little bit before you take action on a big decision. And you were always so thorough in your thought process. And I just loved how you also handled council meetings too. You just provided such great leadership. And this community should be forever thankful for that leadership that you provided throughout the years. I know that it was a true honor for me to witness it from the close vantage point that I had, and I thank you for that privilege. So thank you, Cheryl.
And I've also asked Mike Funk to come forward. He worked also with Cheryl for many years.
Stand up here.
Yes.
Well, good evening. Again, Mike Funk. I worked with Cheryl the last almost 7.5 years. And I should say, again, thank you, Madam Mayor, council, staff for having me in this evening. It's nice to be back and see a lot of smiling faces. It's a wonderful city, and that's large in part due to the leadership of Cheryl Fisher. As a city administrator, again, I should give Dean a little bit of a hard time. Dean was here before me, so not only did I work after him, I now have to go after his speech. And so he took all the things I was going to say. But as a perspective of a city administrator, it doesn't matter where you work, whether you're a city administrator or a city manager, whether it's this city or any city, your closest relationship as an administrator is to your mayor. And in large part because the mayor is really that dignitary of the city, the spokesperson for the city, the person that's out front of the city. And so over the last 7.5 years, I got to know Cheryl because we met every Monday for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And so over 7.5 years, not only did I get to know Cheryl Fisher, the leader of this community, but I got to know Cheryl Fisher, the person. And I can tell you that she's one of the most outstanding people I've ever met. She helped mentor me as I came here almost 7 years ago. In the middle of my career, I've now been doing it for 18 years. Dean got me by a year. Doing this for 17 years, Cheryl again is that rock. And I can tell you, getting to know Cheryl the person really spoke volumes of her leadership. And what Cheryl is all about, for those that didn't work with her every week as I did, is her compassion for this community. I can tell you that no one cared more deeply for the residents of this community. No one cared more passionately for the residents of this community. Because with Minnetrista, there's times of change. Not easy change, just with the growth, with the development, some people liking it, some people not liking it, and Cheryl really cared about people and the residents and being able to listen before making decisions. And it speaks to the patience that Dean did. I learned that from her. And aside from the compassion that she had for the community, it was the compassion that she had for staff. No greater supporter of our staff and the work that these folks up here do managing this thing on a day-to-day basis. So with that, Cheryl, thank you. You deserve this honor and recognition for all the years of caring for this community. It's a pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
invited, and he very unfortunately was not able to make it because he has a council meeting that he needs to be at this evening. But he did send a letter, and I'd like to read it on his behalf. And it says, thank you for the invitation to attend this evening to acknowledge all that Cheryl has done for the community over the years. I'm sorry that I cannot be there, but I appreciate the opportunity to submit this in writing. I was fortunate to have been the city administrator for Minnetrista from March of '98 until August of 2001, and Cheryl was a council member when I first arrived and shortly after became mayor. These years were filled with much activity due to the prosperity of the economy. With the team that was in place, I think there were many successes. Cheryl was the leader of that team. She proved to be someone that not only had vision, but the ability to get people to follow her. She did this in a number of ways. One way is that Cheryl would lead by example, never asking anyone to do something that she herself would not do. She also worked hard, seemingly thinking of nothing but city business. She stayed calm and measured, especially when things were not going very smoothly. She knew she could figure it out and get through it, and she did. She supported staff but expected results. She respected staff opinions and recommendations, but when a decision was made, accepted nothing less than staff carrying out the directive to the best of their ability. She listened to all sides of an issue, trying to find an outcome that was fair and right. I have since said often that her background in mediation served her and the community well. She kept her eye on the big picture and always did what was best for the community, even when it was not popular. Her honesty and integrity was impeccable, motivating others to want to act in a similar fashion. I learned from Cheryl, and I use her example every day. Cheryl was not only an excellent mayor, she is an even better person. I am grateful to have been able to work with her and for her, and I wish you, Cheryl, the best, and I hope these days and the rest are relaxing and fulfilling. Tim Cruikshank. We're not going to keep you much longer, but I am going to ask Councilmember George Seneco to come forward and say a few words. George and I both served with Cheryl for 12 years, so he's one of the longest serving council members with Cheryl, and so I've asked if he would say a few words.
I was supposed to go first, so I didn't have to follow. Probably two of the best administrators that I have. That's my kids that speak loud. I don't have more to say. I mean, these guys have said it. Cheryl, I don't know if you know this, but when I came on the council, she mentored me also. She never told me what to do or how to do it, but if I had a question, she always had the answer. She had all this history. She's always done her homework. She's put in countless hours. If you want to talk about going to different meetings, whether it's a state meeting or a county meeting or whatever, having something to do with the city of Minnetrista, she was there. Pure dedication. Sometimes 30, 40, 50 hours a week, and she never complained. She was there. Same thing for the staff. She stood behind the staff 100%. And as far as the natural resources and what we have to do in Minnetrista with the natural resources and our rural way of life, Cheryl was a big proponent of that. And Lisa's also been a big proponent to follow that too. When I first got on the council, the first meeting, I thought, what the heck am I doing here? Because there's a lot going on. Ron Klein is there, and Mark Davis, and Red Ridge was in place. Major. We had about 100 different ideas, whether the engineer was in here saying, well, let's just put some beams underneath it and jack it up, and no, that won't meet state code. But the state had a code where they wanted a bridge that was completely different than what was there. It wouldn't fit what we're doing here. It was just a big monstrosity. It was wider. Cheryl, and I think Dean was our administrator, and they spent countless hours with the DOT. Finally, they got the DOT to agree. That was Cheryl. And as far as Trista days, there was another thing. In 2001, Cheryl was a big push on having Trista days. And that was the education for safety for children and the family members in Minnetrista. And look at it now, you've got what, 12, 13, 1,400 people in your county with that. You got helicopters, you got fire engines, you know, it's just phenomenal. And I can go on and on. Game Farm Road, the building we have next door, the building back here, big controversy, but long term, I think was a smart thing to do. You know, God bless you, Shirley. You've just been a real inspiration.
And lastly, we have a resolution for the council to pass, and I'm going to read it, and then I have a plaque to give to you. This is recognizing Cheryl Fisher for her years of service to the city of Minnetrista. Whereas Cheryl Fisher was appointed to the Minnetrista Planning Commission in 1993. So if you do the math, she's worked for the city, been involved since 1993. She served as a planning commissioner in 94 and was appointed to the city council in 95 and was elected to the city council in 97, was elected mayor in 99 and served as mayor, being re-elected numerous times until her resignation in April of 2014. A total of 22 years of service to the city of Minnetrista. Whereas Cheryl Fisher helped oversee the growth and development that has occurred in Minnetrista, with city population growing from about 3,000 residents to our current 7,200 residents, and overseeing a long list of residential developments that include North Saunders Lake, South Saunders Lake, Palmer Point, Hermitage Shores, Woodland Cove, Hunter's Crest, Painters Creek, Dutch Lake Knoll, Pinnacle Way, Lakeside, Red Oak, Orchard Cove, Turtle Bay, Turtle Creek, Sunnybrook, Bayside Borough, Oaks, Village, Ridgeville, Temple Woods, and Upland Park. It was many. Whereas Cheryl Fisher helped oversee numerous public improvement projects, such as the rehabilitation of the Enchanted Island Bridge, the Highland Road reconstruction and rehabilitation of numerous roads, including Maple Crest Drive, Game Farm Road, South Bay Drive, Highland Road, as well as working cooperatively with Hennepin County for the County Road 110 expansion and the development of several parks, including Linden Park and Lyle Park in Hunter's Crest. Whereas Cheryl Fisher helped the city be recognized for its fiscal competency and professionalism by receiving HAPR Award for 10 years in a row for the years 2004 through 2013, and being a part of developing the fund balance policy, the capital improvement plan policy, the long-term financial plan policy, the road design standards policy, the transportation plan policy, the tree preservation policy. Okay, this list goes on and on. And it does, because she did so much. The park service open space policy established a park dedication fee policy, and along with the purchase of 50 acres of property for the future development of a community park near City Hall, the construction of the public safety facility and the public works facility, both built at a combined 28% under budget when completed, and achieving a AA+ Standard & Poor's bond rating, overseeing 2 updates to the comprehensive guide plan, along with the implementation of the paperless council and commission packets, and initiating the hiring of professional city administrators. And whereas Cheryl Fisher, throughout her times of public service, has remained committed to the public process and maintained the highest level of public trust by working with city staff, local, regional, and county-based organizations and leaders, too numerous to list, thank goodness, I didn't list all of them. But this also included communications, fire, police, city personnel, services for the elderly, watershed, conservation, recreational-based entities, and now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Minnetrista that we thank Cheryl Fisher for her unprecedented years of dedication, service, and leadership towards the City of Minnetrista and its citizens. Do I have a motion to pass this resolution?
I make a motion to pass this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Cheryl, why don't you come forward?
I'm trying to be extremely brief, although I to Mayor Whalen, almost said Fisher. Council members Stoll and Mortensen on their recent election. I think we have a good group here, and it's going to be great. I especially want to thank my family who is here, my husband Russell, my daughter Julia, and our grandchildren Alex and Charlie, and Jason, my son-in-law. Thank you for being here. It makes it very, very special, and some of our people cannot be here. I am especially grateful to the amazing people like all of you whose support is the reason that I am here tonight. And I thank you for sharing this with me. You are all neighbors and friends. For me, it has been an honor and a privilege to be this city. And you've heard so many other millions of things about what went on here, and it's truly good. I know we have a campus where we have police, administration, and public works all together. It's more economical, more efficient, and all those things. We also have contracts in place so we can ensure the safety of our residents with both the fire department in St. Bonnie and the fire department in Mount, as well as our very own Minnetrista Police Department, who takes care of St. Bonnie as well. And this is a great example of how cooperation works, how it should work, and how important it really is to us. One of my favorite celebrations, of course, is Tuesday Day, and I'm a little biased there, but I hope it continues and expands because it's a wonderful time for everyone, and it defines the center of our city. And I have to stop here and say for a second, none of this would be possible without staff. Staff was always, despite all the people that I worked with, all the colleagues that I had, all the people that came and went, staff has always been the most important. We especially picked out our city administrators that have been before us, and the one that is here now. Congratulations to our newest city administrator, Michael Browning. And so, staff, I just wish you'd give yourselves a hand. You've just been wonderful. Anything I ever needed, whether it was personal or whether it was city business, it was always there with a smile. So thank you very much. I have to say to both Dean Lauder and to Mike Fowler, who served as my city administrator for, well, with Mike it was 7 years, with Dean I don't remember, and you were always there for me to rush things through, to talk things over with. I mean, we both talked about that, and you meant a lot to me, so I thank you very, very much. And there's one other person that I just would like to mention, and then I will be through. I want to say thank you also to the woman who took the entire journey with me. The first time I said I was going to run, Dorothy said I'm in. And funny enough, it is Happy Groundhog Day today, and it is also Dorothy's birthday. So happy birthday.
No.
Thank you so much for being with me. And thanks to all the rest of you for all you've done and what you've done for me. God bless.
We'll take just 2 minutes. If anybody would like to leave, you're welcome to. And then we're going to have a presentation by Mr. David Lang for the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District.
There may be an exodus.
And thank you again for coming. Congratulations, Cheryl. No, it's not, I don't know what it is. It's, I'll just,
I'm happy to share.
I've got this, so I'm good here. And I think I'll be okay. But if I need something, I'll ask, yeah. See, I can't, it won't take my password. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So. Who's all
see you, Mike.
Okay, good.
Yeah, nice to see you.
See you, Mike.
Mike.
Okay. We'll get started. Okay. All right, so our next item on our agenda is a special presentation by David Lang, who is our representative to the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, the LMCD. And also with him this evening is Mr. Greg Nyback, the Executive Director. What is it? Executive Director of the LMCD. Please come to the podium. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Council members, thank you. And staff, thank you. And again, it's Greg. Thank you for joining me tonight. He's here just to help answer any questions that maybe I don't know the answers to, which I'm sure there are quite a few. I have provided just a brief summary of the meetings that I've attended since being appointed. Back at the end of October, I was sworn in officially at the LMCD. And at that time, there was a petition for quiet waters. And I've included a map that was proposed for quiet waters. And in the subsequent meetings in November, I wasn't able to attend. I was out of the country. However, I did include a link that you can go see their heartfelt proposal for the minimum wage, which was primarily the petitioners wanted it for safety and also to prevent further erosion to their properties. In December, there was a petition was voted upon. Initially, there was an amended proposal. The proposal was amended, I should say. The east-west traffic was, that part of the proposal was denied. There was further discussion on north-south traffic between Deering Island and Shady Wood Point. Because the distance between the point and the island is only about 430 feet. So they wanted to give further discussion as to and see if there was any issues known by the Hennepin County Sheriff as far as safety and or accidents. That went to the safety committee and there was no information that they could track into their backlogs because they've updated their systems. So they don't have access to that information, but to their knowledge, there was no safety issues with keeping it as such. So it was re-voted upon with the revision and it was denied. So they, petition was denied. There you go.
Okay.
And there was a special board workshop to revisit the mission, vision, objectives, and goals in January. And we've had, it was about a 4-hour meeting that was led by a former
Chair.
Chair.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it was very interesting. This is a process that will probably be going on throughout the year as we get together for other special meetings to finalize visions, missions. But what was also brought up during that meeting was a list of expectations, which I've included a draft in the packet. It's at the very back. So the reason why I included this was my house is for sale. And we're anticipating moving out of Minnetrista, and I don't know if it will be before the end of the year or not. But I felt that this would be a good place to start as far as expectations for any council member or individual such as myself who wishes to step into the role if our house sells. If it doesn't, I plan on, with your permission, still doing this. So.
Okay.
I've also included a meeting calendar. If anybody's interested in attending either the safety meetings, the AIS meetings, or the board meetings, I've included the calendar for y'all. There's also a special notice for a special meeting with the County Sheriff, and that will take place on the 4th, so Wednesday night, if anybody's interested in that. The officers, the board officers were reappointed. There was an addition of a secretary, but I forgot his name. Thomas, thank you. He was appointed as secretary to the LMCD board. And
Mr. Lang, who, so the chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, can you give us their names?
Dan
Basson?
Basson, thank you,
Mhm.
is the chair.
Okay.
And the vice chair is from Orono. Jay Green, thanks.
From Mound,
Mound, okay.
Okay, Jay Green, okay,
And the secretary,
okay. Is from Spring Park, okay, Gary Hughes, okay.
not the greatest person.
That's okay. Yeah.
Cities I do okay with. There was also prior to my engagement, there was I guess a redefining or an agreed upon definition of commercial multiple use slips. The same thing is happening right now for the yacht clubs. They were to get together and come together with one agreement that they were going to resubmit for redefining the yacht clubs. And I believe they've come to that, however, it hasn't been submitted to the board yet for review and approval. One exciting thing that I would like to point out, I've heard a lot about that really sounds great. They did talk about the successes that I've included. Again, in the packet is the boater safety education training program.
Mhm.
I've included some information about that along with the announcement for the first class. They do anticipate that all the classes will be completed, 3 or 4 of them prior to the boating season beginning this year. They discussed and highlighted several successes with what people learned in these meetings, just to help improve the safety and awareness for the public in general. There's also a requirement for committee appointments to participate in subcommittees. I haven't at this point stepped up to one simply because of the times that they typically meet at. I don't have that availability. My work schedule is not as flexible as I would like it to be, but that does happen. And moving forward, I would like to hear from you all. Again, if there's any questions about anything that's going on, but for future frequency, how many times would you like me to do this? And how would you appreciate communication? And what sort of level of involvement should something like the quiet waters come up again? What sort of input would you like to provide? That sort of things to help me so I can better help the city of Minnetrista.
Well, let's start with questions. Does the council have questions of Mr. Lang? It does, I just want to make a couple comments. It does take time because they meet at least twice a month, and then sometimes there's special work sessions. So I just want to say thank you very much for your time and commitment. And then it does also require you reading your packet materials. So as you know, it can be time consuming. And then it consists of a board of 14 members. There's a representative from every single city that has shoreline on Lake Minnetonka, and there are 14 cities, and please don't ask me to list them all. So it is challenging, I can imagine, at times. I was the chair for this organization for a while, and I can tell you it can be challenging to handle 14 members, but again, we really appreciate your time and commitment to this. I think in terms, I believe you live close to the water, maybe not right on the water, but
I can be there in 30 seconds.
yes, right. And so I'm sure you're out on the water a lot, and I would say we would have to defer your judgment if you feel differently. When it comes to quiet waters, I think you need to listen to staff and heed their advice. talk to your fellow board members and especially the experienced ones, but I know that your staff is also very experienced. I think in terms of talking to us maybe a couple times a year, I don't think you need to do it monthly, not even really quarterly. So maybe at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, especially if your meeting schedule is a little bit lighter, then maybe another update would be fine. And certainly you can always call me, and if we have questions, we can call you, and we can stay in communications like that. I kind of look at the agendas because they're sent to me too, so I'm somewhat aware. If there is a issue regarding Minnetrista, whether it's a dock or some other issue, maybe you can give me a call and just to make sure that we're aware of it. Okay? Anything else?
Mayor, the only thing I'll ask or suggest to Mr. Lang, if he's so inclined, this packet of information was really good, but
Yeah.
you know, if you are going to plan another visit to the council later in the year, if you can email me those materials, I can include them in the packet. So when council members get their packet the Thursday and Friday before, they can take a look at what it is you're going to come talk about. It's up to you, though. That would be, I think, beneficial for the council to have these materials ahead of time. So that'd be great.
Yeah. And this is great. Thank you for doing this. Thanks, Greg. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we'll move on. We move persons to be heard next. I don't have anybody listed, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. Next we have our consent agenda items. We have approval of our special meeting minutes from January 20, approval of our regular meeting minutes from January 20th, resolution approving an agreement with Hennepin County for the Youth Sports Grant Program to construct 2 new tennis courts at Lyle Park. We also have a resolution approving a comprehensive plan amendment and rezone for John Bowl at 8700 County Road 110 West from agricultural preserve to agricultural and amend the city's comprehensive plan. We also have a resolution approving an expedited subdivision for John Bowl to subdivide 8700 County Road 110 West into 2 parcels, 110 acre and 159.76 acres. And we have a resolution approving comprehensive plan amendment and rezone for John Bowl to rezone the new 59.76 acre parcel to 8700 County Road 110 West from agricultural to agricultural preserve and amend the city's comprehensive plan. And we have another resolution approving a simple subdivision for John Bowl to combine the new 59.76 zoned agricultural preserve with 2970 County Road 92, which is zoned agricultural preserve, and he wants to combine it into 1 parcel. And that is all of our consent agenda items. Any questions, anything that you need to pull? Okay, is there a motion to approve consent agenda items as presented?
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Next, we have our public hearings, but we have none, so we will move on to our business items. First item is approving the sale of our GO equipment certificates, Series 2015A. Mr. Grimm?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. This item in your packet is on pages 53 through 70, but the main thing I'll probably point you to in what we have Rebecca Kurtz here from Ellers is the handout that's at your desk that has the sale day report for Minnetrista, the $331,000. We ended up doing a little less GO obligation equipment certificates. These were as part of our 2015 budget to finance some of our equipment purchases, our squads, some public works equipment, etc. And she's here to give the good news. Anytime you get a interest rate of, I guess I'm going to steal the thunder, I'm going to 1.99%. So anytime you get an interest rate under 2, which in this case we did, it's I don't want to say free money, but it's basically a really good rate. So I think it's really it'll be good for our departments to get some of that equipment that they've maybe held off on and stretched, and I'll let her explain the details. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Rebecca Kurtz from Ellers and Associates. And as said, we did take bids today, had our office for what ended up being $331,000 dollars in general obligation equipment certificates. You may remember when Todd Hagan was here about a month or so ago and calling for the sale, we had estimated that it would be $334,000. The cost of issuance was a little less than anticipated, so we were able to reduce the bond size.
Okay.
As stated, these bonds will be used to pay for capital equipment. In addition to the bonds that were sold today, the city is contributing a cash contribution of $50,000 to assist with the acquisition of equipment. We did this a little bit different than what some of the issues have been in the past. We did not go a full competitive sale, doing a complete official statement and sending it to national firms because it is a smaller size bond issue than some of the other ones. We, with discussions on staff, decided to move forward with a limited competitive sale. So the offering memorandum was sent to 11 area banks. We received 2 bids, and the low bid was Klein Bank out of Chaska, Minnesota, with a true interest cost of 1.99%. With that, we are looking again, just as a reminder, it's a 5-year term on the issue. Annual debt service is approximately just under $75,000 annually. The bonds are callable at any time, so to the extent that maybe rates would go lower, or maybe more likely that you would have additional cash where you would want to pay that prior to the maturity date, you would have the opportunity to do that. We are looking at closing the bonds or having the funds available on February 25th, and I do believe there is a resolution in your packets awarding the sale if you choose to do so. We would recommend that you award to Klein Bank at the rate of 1.99%. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions by council? The rate is great. I think that's very good. I think it's lower than what staff had kind of estimated. And of course, the 331 versus 334 is also very good. Any other questions?
Did I hear you say that you put it out to 12 different banks in the community?
11.
11.
There are 11 area banks.
And there are only 2 that responded?
That is correct.
Okay.
With this, with the smaller size, it was not cost effective to have a rating, so that sometimes impacts the banks, what they currently have been working on, or their ability to support and buy bonds in the amount of $331,000. Sometimes have an impact too.
Exceptional rate, good job. Exceptional rate.
Okay. So any other questions? Comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm looking for a resolution awarding the sale of the General Obligation Equipment Certificates, Series 2015A, in the original aggregate principal amount of $331,000, fixing their form and specifications, directing their execution and delivery, and providing for their payment. And the bank would be specified as Klein Bank at the rate of 1.99.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded, and I'm not going to repeat the resolution. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Grimm, is that all you need from us then?
I think Ms. Kurtz, I think, was just looking for a quick signature or
If I
two.
could
If
get
you
a quick
just
signature on the proposal form, that
yeah,
would be great.
and then
Give it to me.
I'll let you find it, Brian.
Okay.
oh no, she's actually got it. Yeah.
Thought it was in here.
If I could get, and then each, one by you and one by another, please.
Get the signatures and,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
as long as you're here, right?
What's the contact the bank likes to have?
Do you want, Patricia, do you want to sign this?
Let's see this
Quick.
process.
Need to sign.
I appreciate you taking time to do this for us.
And you'll fill in the date.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Here's your copy.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
I have to get back to the meeting. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our next business item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion about approving an agreement and award services for repair and modification of the infrared heating system in the Public Works building. Is that Mr. Gary, Peter?
I think I'll start.
Okay.
Gary, if you want to come up to the podium, because there may be some questions on this. Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a awarding of a service repair modification to our infrared heating system in the Public Works building. This has been a very troublesome system from, I believe, the get-go, and Gary can give you some of the details on that. But in essence, what we're asking for you to do is to take the one large system, break it up into two systems. The reason for the motor failures had to do with the size of the system and the blower and being too big for the amount of heat it was generating. It was kind of melting some of the fans or rotors or whatever it was melting. So breaking it into two systems still provides us with the same amount of BTU heat. It also gives us a little redundancy, so if one system fails, we got the other one there to back it up. Right now, we don't have that with just the one system. And so, Gary, if you want to just kind of step in from there and maybe fill in some of the points that I certainly missed, go right ahead.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for having me tonight. Yeah, he is correct. The system that we have right now, since I've been here in almost 3 years, this is the second failure that we've had. From what I understand, it's the third for sure, might be the fourth since the building's been built.
Wow.
Basically what they've determined is the number of BTUs that are being exhausted through this fan is causing the fan blades to warp, which is throwing the bearings out of the motor. So what's being proposed is doing two separate systems. Right now the biggest problem we have is the heat went out, it's cold, we now have to rent temporary heat, which also consisted of renting two 1,000 gallon propane tanks. So we're paying for that, the propane tanks and the propane to heat our shop while the system is down. So redundancy is a good thing. Two separate systems would supply, if one would go down, we'd still have heat, which would eliminate this problem. So there's no way around it. We looked at doing supplemental heat for putting in some like resin or forced heaters as a backup, but that's almost $10,000 to do that. Makes most sense to do this in the long run. I'm not certain if there's anything with the design of the system itself, if we can go back after the original engineering company or the builders that designed the system. I don't know what kind of statute of limitations is on that, if it's worth pursuing. I've heard tell that they're out of business too, so I'm not certain, but something needs to get done because it's it's a major problem that has to be resolved.
Right. Mr. Vanderlini, I'm sure you have some comments or questions.
Yeah, I know a little bit about this thing. Do we know who designed the system and installed it?
I do not know who designed it. The installer was part of what they partnered with Delta Systems, so they kind of combined the systems together. Peak Heating and Cooling, who we were contracted with, is now the main representative for Gordon Roberts Heating Systems. They're kind of a design installer, so they're authorized installer for it, and they've never seen a system that scale that way. So,
And I'll make it quick. A little background: when that building was designed, they had spec'd 4 hanging heaters, forced air heaters, which were basically obsolete 20 years ago, and that was something that came up: is why we don't go to an infrared system. A tube system. And they said, yeah, we can do that. And we asked what was the cost difference, and they said nothing. They do the same price. So you get a better efficient heater. Works a lot better. Instead of heating the air, you're heating objects. You open the door, you don't lose your air. The heat doesn't go with it. Anyway, it's just a little more state of the art. The building was built, and they got ready to install the system. They came back to us and said, well, the system that we designed, we don't really think it's a good system. And the question I had for the gentleman is, I said, you designed this system 6 months ago, and it was a good system. And I said, now you're coming to us and telling us it's not. And he said, no. He said, it's much better, instead of going with either 2 or 4 individual heaters, one big system. He said, that's the way to go. I said, well, what happens if it goes out? It goes out, we got no heat. You've got multiple heaters. No, this is the best thing. And it was like, well, what's it going to cost us? It's the same price. Well, no. And I don't know exactly what it was. It was $8 or $9, $10,000. I don't remember. It might have been more, but it was an upcharge. And that's what bothers me here is we get an upcharge to go to this great system that was supposed to be, and we find out that actually went the other way. We ended up with a system that is no good. Now we have to go back to what we were supposed to get originally. So that's why I say I don't know if there's any recourse to the person that designed this system. It's kind of ironic that, you know, now we sit here.
I think we'd have to have staff take a look and see what
Yeah.
who did it. I think it was a heating. I mean, I don't remember all the details, but maybe staff could look into that. And if there is some recourse, I'm not sure, but you know, certainly we should take some action if there is.
Mayor and Council did have a chance briefly before the start of the meeting to talk with Mr. Vandalini about this, and he did ask me that exact question: who was it that designed it? And I'm sorry, I was arriving here just as the police building was being built. I think the Public Works building was done by the time I got here in late '09. So we can certainly investigate that and then report back to the council, and also maybe find out if there is a, I don't know if statute of limitations is the right word, but something similar to that to find out if there's something we could do if, you know, Mr. Peters, he was here after me, but if, I'm sure this is what he does, so I'm sure he's talked with guys in his area, you know, if they are out of business, I don't know what we can do, but we'll try to find out the answers to those questions and see if there is anything that we could do.
I'm assuming that Energy Sales and Peak would know that because they were the supplier for the materials, right?
I believe so. They were the original suppliers, and Energy Sales has been very good. They are going to go, we are not being charged for the exhaust fans themselves, the new motors or anything, either one of them. They will give them to us for no charge through warranty, which they did last time it went all too. They did go and with the company, and they did get our motor warranted and stuff like that last time. We just don't have to pay for that installation too. So they have been very good to work with, and I'm sure they can help us with that.
And that may be the easy way to find out. You know, I'm sure they work with these companies, and I'm sure chances of getting anything out of this company probably is slim to none.
Sure.
But I think it's worth a shot.
Absolutely.
Do we need to get this thing fixed tomorrow, or?
With your approval, I've got it lined up to get it installed this week yet, so they have everything in stock. I made sure of that. I kind of figured we have to have heat, so I can get everything set to go. So
Fortunately, hasn't been a super cold winter.
Yeah.
So
I've been lucky.
But we have water lines out there too for the
Yes, we do.
That's the thing,
fire suppression,
system is in-
and we just simply don't want to take the chance of water pipes freezing, so that would cost even more.
And we thought about draining the system down, but then we had to pull out our vehicles out. You can't have anything in there
Right.
without fire protection, so it's kind of a,
Right,
you know, it was a lose-lose situation all the way around.
yeah. Mr. Christians, do you
Gary,
have a
how,
question?
excuse me, Gary, how old is that system? Is that 5 years old? Because
Well, Bill was about, what, 2009?
Nine.
So
Six.
2010, I think they took, you know, in, so yeah. So
Yeah, you're gonna
5
have a
years,
manufacturer's-
it's been- Well, since I've been here, not even 3 years, it's already on its second motor. And I believe Monty said it's either the third for sure, if not the fourth one they've put in already.
well, fortunately, you have a manufacturer's warranty that should be good for some time, but that doesn't do any good if it keeps
Yeah.
going out. Then it's worthless if it keeps going out.
Yeah, at least we're getting the.
And then when you, I noticed also on there you had Peak from Chanhassen, which is a very good company.
Yep.
Have you had anybody else look at it too, or is that somebody that you were used to working with?
We went with Peak originally when the first motor went out because they are the authorized dealer for them, for Gordon Roberts Gordon, I can't remember which way it goes. You know, but they are their authorized installer for the area, so that's why we went with them. We figured you know, and they were very, very helpful last time we came in. Their service guy, Chad, was wonderful to work with. He came in, he knew exactly what to do. He got the parts, he got everything squared away. He was the one that actually pursued everything and got it under warranty for us, so.
Okay.
And
So
I
you got this
felt-
big unit now, and you're gonna break it down into two smaller units?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep,
Right.
we're gonna have one, it'll be one longer unit on the, would be in the west side of the building, which will have 4 burners on it. Right now, it's a teat system, so if you come off of the exhaust fan, it tees off, goes to 4 burners on one side, and makes a big loop, and there's 6 on the other. They're going to make 2 separate systems, one with a 4-burner system, one with a 6-burner.
But I assume they're the same manufacturer, the same,
Yep, it'll still be all the.
everything's all the same
Yep,
except
it'll be
two
all the
small
same,
units.
it's just gonna be, they'll have to add a little pipe here and there, remove a T and just kinda, you know, do a little
Okay.
modification, so.
Thank you, Gary.
And Mr. Peters, you see that as serving our purposes for the foreseeable future, the one that's being recommended now at the $5,700?
Yeah, I mean, well, of course, what they've guaranteed us, you know, is that, you know, it'll help, you know, and it should, you know, even in the long run, if we do have a problem, at least we won't be renting heat. But with the amount of heat, the BTUs that we're gonna be exhausting through here will be cut down drastically, you know, between two systems. So we're not gonna have that, you know, major amount of heat loss through there. So the heat pumps themselves will be a little bit smaller, but more energy efficient, I was told, with the newer design.
Are they gonna stay with a puller fan, or are they gonna go to a pushing system?
Sounds like they're gonna do a pushing system this
Right,
time.
and
So
That'll
the
make a
design.
difference too.
that's
Yeah.
that's what we're, pardon my pun, pushing for, moving towards. That's what we'd rather have. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a more common system, that's what I've got in mind. And it was kind of funny after this, I mean, I know what the hanging heaters are, I mean, I had one, so I went to an infrared system and had it designed, and asked the design company, I said, well, instead of going, that's what their recommendation was, 2 heaters, one on each. They said, what about one system? And they said, no. So I was kind of worried that we may be talking about this someday, and here we sit, so.
So, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we're looking for approval for $5,700, a motion to approve this agreement with Peak Heating and Cooling for the repair and modifications to the infrared heating system in Public Works Building at a cost not to exceed $57,000.
I make a motion to approve an agreement with Peak Heating and Cooling for the repair modifications to the infrared heating system in the Public Works Building not to exceed a cost of $5,700.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. So thank you, Mr. Peters, for being here, and go forth and get it installed.
thank you very much.
All right. Next, we have our agreement with Craig Rapp. Mr. Barone, I believe you'll take that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. In the packet is a resolution to approve the proposal for the team building and strategic planning services from Craig Rapp LLC. As you know, at the end of the last council meeting, I probed the council for a date, and we ended up selecting a meeting date for our initial meeting date with Mr. Rapp to be taking place a week from today, which is Monday, February 9th at 3 p.m. And that will be step 1 of the overall number of meetings that we will be meeting. Also assigned to you was a questionnaire, and I hope you have, if you haven't completed the questionnaire in Word format, not PDF, and sent that back to Mr. Rapp. Just a reminder that deadline is, I think, 5 p.m. on this Wednesday, so and that's a reminder to staff as well, I'm sure. I don't know if anybody's done it, but we'll find out.
Wednesday is the deadline.
Wednesday is
We
the
still have a
deadline.
couple days.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
So I'm not too worried about people getting it, I just want to be reminded. But Mr. Rapp is excellent at what he does. I have the full proposal that's in the packet, and I'm sure we'll be able to, get the ball rolling as far as doing our team building and things for the fact that we have 3 new council members. You have me sitting in the administrator's chair now. I just think it would be a good idea to pursue this, and that's what I heard from you all at the last meeting. So again, what you have is the full proposal, so I'm looking for an approval to hire Mr. Rapp for the strategic planning team building services at a total cost of $8,950.
And this is just slightly different, if you recall, if you look in your packet. It did add one component, and that's the work plan. And it's really needed, otherwise you have this plan, but you don't really have a way to implement it. So the work plan will give us as well as staff guidance on who's responsible for what and who's going to do what when.
That's correct.
One question I have for you, Mike, is this going to be like starting over, or is he going to take from the last session that we had 2 years ago when we put the plans together and when we had our session? I think it was 2 years ago when we had our session.
Yes, you're correct. Mayor and Councilmember Christians, it's kind of a combo of both. So I think we have the essence of a strategic plan, but since you have 3 of 5 new members on your council, the suggestion, take that materials, look at it, and spend some time. We're not going to start from ground zero on the strategic plan, but we obviously have something to work from. So I think the new members will be at a little bit of an advantage, new members of the council, since they'll have something that you two, as veteran members of the council, will already have knowledge of. So, it's going to be kind of a combo of both. I don't think we're starting over, but, definitely the fact that we already have one in place, it'll be good to revisit, because I'm sure the new council members are going to have different ideas about things. So, as you can expect. So.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve the contract with Craig Rapp.
I'll make that motion as stated.
Okay. For the additional 2,000, so for a total of 8950. Is that
Yes.
okay? All right. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the contract with Craig Rapp LLC in the amount of 8950. Any further questions?
I just have one. On the total package, are we talking 3 different sessions?
Good question. I'm trying to recall that.
I thought it
off
was
the top
3 or
of-
4.
Yeah,
4 to
there's
6.
actually, the first session is a week from today.
Mhm.
That's roughly 3 to 4 hours. The second sessions will be kind of 2 pieces to it. There's going to be kind of another 3 to 4 hour session, and then a second one that will be 4 to 6 hours. That could be like Friday evening, Saturday morning. It's going to be up to us and our calendars to decide how we want to attack that. But you're looking anywhere between 6 and 10 hours, if I do math in my head real quick, for those 2 combined sessions that kind of feed off each other. The first one would be an additional, that we're having next week is an additional 3 to 4 hours. And then the final session is a staff-only one, as we take and assimilate all the work that we've done through those 3 sessions. And then we will start putting those plans together, and that's to help guide us on how to write these plans and put it together and bring it back to council for approval. So,
I'm just trying to recall the last time we did this. If I recall, I think there were 2 sessions that we had then, right?
yeah.
And I'm going to assume that the pricing of the dollar amount that he's talking about is similar to what we had 2
I'm
years
not
ago.
exactly sure of the pricing of the last one, since I wasn't really involved in pricing the last one, but I know we did, it was probably in the same ballpark. I can't give you the exact total, but it's probably in the $60,000
Yeah, it seemed like it
range.
was somewhat. I was just curious to know if you had that, what that was.
Yeah, I think it's
Without that piece.
fairly close. And then we did, I believe, purchase the kind of the staff-only session later.
Yeah.
We didn't do it right away like we're doing tonight, but we did
Okay.
purchase that, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just for point of clarification, Mr. Brony, the staff component is a piece of this that we're
Yes.
voting on?
Yes.
I want
Yes.
to, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then they put together the work plan, the implementation plan too.
Great.
So, okay, good. Good questions. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. And yes, it's 3. We start at 3 p.m. a week from today. Here.
The police
So-
training.
Oh, and the police. That's right. Next door.
Yes.
All right. So we'll move on to our water treatment discussion. Who wants to take that? Mr. Barone. Mr. Grimm.
I counted 3 points, you're right.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I think you're going to get the 2-teamer between myself and Mr. Grimm. I'll start out with a few comments, and then I'll kind of turn it over to Brian a little bit to talk a little bit more about more of the detailed financial-based things. Yeah, I do. So the last time we talked about water treatment was roughly a month ago, the January 5th, the very first meeting of the calendar year. At that time, we had a request from the city council to kind of take one last stab at finding out if our neighboring communities, Mound and St. Bonifacius, would be interested in partnering again or having a meeting to talk about partnering again with water treatment, kind of a group effort on the water treatment. I made those telephone calls to both Mound and to St. Bonifacius. They had their meetings between, I believe it was between the last meeting in January and tonight's meeting. Both of those city councils were able to meet and discuss it. Essentially, as you saw on the front page of the paper on Friday, Mound said no. They basically have told us that they've got a lot of different issues to deal with that are more pressing. As much as they would like to do water treatment, they're just not financially ready to address that issue. And in fact, that's the same answer that I heard, or the council talked about, the Mound Council talked about, that we heard last year. I had a meeting with former Mayor Hunt and myself with former Mayor Hannes and City Manager Candace Hansen, and last June, July, they said the same exact thing. They said, we're just not ready to do it. As much as we want it, we're just not ready to do it. We did ask St. Bonnie. That was kind of new in this whole process. As you know, they're surrounded by us. They're 1 square mile. They have their own small water treatment gravity filtration system in place and online, and have had so for a number of years. When I talked with Brenda Fisk, their clerk treasurer, I said, ask your council. What we'd be interested in finding out is if you have any appetite for having a discussion, council to council level. But the basic question is, would you mind us partnering with you? That could be expanding your current plant. I don't know what the orientation is and how easy that would be. But I think they essentially said no as well. I think they're very happy with what they have. They're kind of bound by our board, our surrounding them. I think they're fine with what they got, and I just really had no appetite to discuss it. So, not surprised by either of the answers, but nonetheless, that was the results of my conversation with those two cities. Kind of going forward, where we go here from today, when we at staff level decided to what are we going to put in the packet? We decided we're going to put in the packet what we put in the packet in the first meeting of this year on January 5th, which is the materials that you see in your packet. We know we need a solution for water treatment. We're really looking for a realistic and a cost-effective answer. We think we owe it to our residents to do something about water. To do nothing, I think, would be quite a disservice to them. And you know, the other thing is that we're still a growing community, and so we want to be able to compete in the housing marketplace, so to speak. I think our reputation is probably not a very good one with the quality of water that we have here. I don't want that reputation to continue and kind of hurt us as we try to grow. I think it's imperative that we fix our water however it needs to be fixed, and then move forward. So when realtors and developers are putting in and selling houses, that they'll want to come here because they know the water's not an issue versus going somewhere else. The other kind of overarching comment that has been brought up was that we had suggested in our staff report that we go with a third engineering firm for that, for this water treatment. It's been a kind of as most people in this room probably know, it's been kind of a crazy last year and a half as far as discussing the water treatment issue here in Minnetrista. WSB stepped away from being a participant in those talks quite a while ago. They don't want to be back in those talks. They're happy to help us coordinate whatever we would like to do with a third engineering firm, but they're not in it to try to get the job back, so to speak. We're basically recommending a fresh start. If we go towards a decentralized option, that's our motivation, is because we think that's the most cost-effective, best way to deliver clean water to our residents. It's not motivated by not liking Bolton and Mink. It's not motivated by wanting to get WSB back in the fold. We don't really care about which engineering firm does it. We just want a fresh start. I think with as politically contentious as this topic has been, it's probably in everybody's best interest to try a different firm to do this. I don't think any of the work that either Bolton and Mink or WSB in the past, because there was a water treatment solution passed in late 2013 that was later basically dumped. I I don't think anybody is looking to start over. I think what we have is we have enough knowledge base from our dealings with both WSB and Bolton and Mink that all that information is still there. I don't think a new firm, a third firm would be starting from zero. They're gonna have a lot to work with. I couldn't tell you exactly what the timeline is going to be in order to have a third firm give you, here's what we're gonna do. That's gonna sort of depend on the conversation that takes place tonight with exactly what it is you wanna do. I'll turn to Mr. Hornby and Mr. Grimm as we kind of go through that conversation tonight to help guide us. But I don't think we're starting from scratch. I think a third firm would just give us a fresh start. There are a lot of firms out there that do water treatment, including the ones that I've talked about already, whether they're upper Midwest regional or national firms. There's a lot of people, a lot of horsepower out there that we can tap into and try to find. I don't think that this is, you know, WSB and Bolton, make no offense, I don't think either of them got the market corner on how to build water plants or water treatment facilities. There's plenty of people that do that around this country. So with that, I'll ask if Mr. Grimm and Mr. Hornby, if you feel like you need to correct me or Brian on anything, go ahead and step in, but I'll give Brian a chance to make a few comments.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. I mean, based on the responses we got from St. Bonnie and Mound, I mean, we really can't count on any other additional users other than what we have right now currently, or what we think is coming in the near-term future to pay for this. So from our perspective, you know, the decentralized plan option fits the city, you know, best from staff's prerogative for, you know, multiple reasons. I guess one, I mean, the growth pattern in Minnetrista, we're not like St. Bonnie where we're an urban core 1 square mile. We have, you know, little pockets of development that aren't contiguous. So, you know, I don't know, I'm big into just, you know, sports and stuff. I coach my son's team, and I guess an analogy I'd use is that, you know, some teams use man-to-man defense, some teams use zone. It's, you know, based on the characteristics of your city, you know, whether decentralized fits or centralized fits. I mean, I know there was some conversation at the last meeting about do it right or don't do it at all. I guess on staff's perspective, the decentralized method is doing it right. City of Minnetonka has decentralized. There's numerous other ones out there. So I guess that would be, you know, the starting, you know, one item there. Obviously, you know, we've had residents in, you know, about disruptions to their properties, you know, existing homeowners. You know, when you know, the centralized plant had about, you know, $9.5 million worth of, you know, water main or piping. You know, that money can be spent on other aspects of the water treatment project, you know, the plants and other water infrastructure. And, you know, basically, I guess, you know, going into the last point, we feel from staff's perspective that the overall cost is lower for the decentralized option. It's easier to build in phases. You can extend the phases as the city grows. You're just not committed to so much right up front. So those are, you know, three main things, you know, why we see the decentralized as the best option, and we're made that recommendation now at the last couple meetings in the packet. To, I guess, go a little further on Mike's point, as far as a third firm, I think we just feel from staff's perspective, it'd be just beneficial for both staff and for the council to just have that fresh start. I mean, a couple of the issues we had, you know, with Bolton and Mink that, I mean, the reverse osmosis, I think I've stated that before. It just seemed like we spent a lot of our time, it was misspent on a option that just didn't seem real viable. I mean, I guess the analogy I would make is, as a finance director, I'm not going to come, you know, it'd be great to do a levy to do everything you want and levy 20% increase, but some options just aren't viable, and you hope that your consultants and people that you count on will make strong recommendations and say, you know, based on, you know, cost and additional wasted water and just other, you know, SAC fees and, you know, the Minnesota PFA scored us as a 5. You know, that we didn't have nitrates or anything in our ground that would have warranted spending all the time we did on reverse osmosis. So I guess that's something that staff just saw as a little bit of, you know, lost time and wish that could have been corrected last summer. Another point, I guess when the value engineering study was done last February, I guess the way that we got to the study was a little different. That came through a council member, but not staff, but I won't spend a lot of time on that. But the fact that, I mean, Bolton and Mink did the value engineering, usually that's then turned over to an independent firm to carry the project forward. for some reason in this case, I mean, the Bolton and Mink staff admitted as much that that's usually the process. So it was just a little different process to do the value engineering and then not turn it over to, we went out for proposals, but then we went with the same firm that did the value engineering. Sort of really not the norm. So in our eyes, it probably should have even been turned over to a third firm back in April or whatever, last April, but here nor there. And then lastly, I guess, just some of the time spent on the projections and sort of the 160 households that were used in a lot of the projections up front. It just seemed like staff wasn't really listened to at first, by Bolton and Mink as far as using something more conservative and not, designing a plant that would have been twice the size that we needed or spending time, doing that. There was, some frustration as far as sizing it right. I live in a community that's water rates are pretty high based on water and sewer infrastructure being built too big right off the bat. Once it's there, you can't really go back and shrink it down. So I don't know. There's just a few things that have sort of added up that I think is just a time to go with a third firm just to get a fresh start. So.
Okay. Mr. Hornby, did you have anything to add to the report?
Not, excuse me, not directly, but if you have questions of me, I'm certainly welcome to answer those questions for you.
All right. Well, I think what staff is looking for tonight is direction as to where the council wants to head with this. They've made their recommendation. I think they've made it quite clear as to what they feel is in the best interest of the city and what the city can afford. I've been on board with a decentralized system because of the costs and because of the impacts to the residents and because of the ability to phase it in and because of the ability to pay for it, basically. So if it were up to me alone, I would say we should at least decide tonight on the system, the decentralized system, and then have some discussions on how that's going to look and give staff direction from here. Are there comments, questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Mortensen?
One of the concerns was the water tower going decentralized in the Saunders area. Are there other options for location for the water tower?
Well, I think the discussions that went on with additional storage, I believe the centralized plant, had some underground storage or had storage at the water plant. The decentralized system looked at overall in your system, you would have a third water plant out in Hunter's Crest with an elevated tank and wells out there as well. So they're both different concepts, but your storage would come from, in that particular plan, decentralized plan, the additional storage would be in the Hunter's Crest area. We also looked at in the most recent cost updates we provided at the first meeting of the year, we included elevated storage or additional storage in that estimate as well. We also looked at the potential to put that closer to Kings Point Road and where we could put it if it was combined with the treatment plant there or if it was on a parcel nearby. And also talked to the community development director and talked briefly to one of the developing parties about potentially making some land changes there to make something like that work if needed. There's not anything set on that part of it as well, but we did look at what would work best in the system. The original plan was also in your comp plan, had additional storage out at Hunter's Crest. So
but you wouldn't need.
Yeah.
There would not be a tank. There would not be any additional storage in Saunders.
Okay. Didn't the original have a water tower?
There were several concepts that were provided in some of the planning, and there was one that did show an elevated tank there, but that's not what was recommended.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hornby, would the elevated tower or the at-ground level tower storage on Kings Point or the elevated in Hunter's Crest, would that be sufficient then for the storage needs in order to provide adequate fire protection for both the southwest areas as well as the centralized areas?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
The north area, keep in mind, the north area is its own independent system in that
Right.
scenario.
Yeah, because the hybrid, I think, as Ms. Thole had dubbed it, if you will, last time, would be connecting the Kings Point Road treatment plant to the central district. So
Essentially,
you'd
that's
pipe
what-
it to the
essentially,
central.
that's what we are doing with that. So
Okay.
So the central system would be connected in a very similar manner as routing the water main would have occurred with the central plant. So essentially, it goes from Kings Point Road over to Farm Hill and Halsted and comes up and connects to the central system at Pinnacle.
Okay.
So that's where that connection is made.
And then, so the connection is made at Pinnacle, so you don't need to go further north or west, or you don't need to go any further than that. So you go up Halsted to Pinnacle, you made that connection, so now you don't have to run it through the neighborhood of, you don't even have to run it down 110 or through the neighborhoods or
Correct.
beyond. I mean,
Correct. It would-
okay,
The water main would end south of 110.
okay, okay. Okay. Mr. Vanderlinde?
Yes. I guess the first thing I want to say is, no matter what happens here, this is a good thing. We're finally getting our water fixed. It's been like this, we're way overdue. I mean, we've been dealing with this thing for years. The only thing I want to make sure that however we get this done, I want to make sure that we do it the right way and get the best value for our dollar. And that's where I'm kind of a little confused about some of these numbers. On page 92, and this was in the last packet, there's something that says projected cost with bituminous restoration and one without. What is that?
Well, I should clarify that the columns were copied and they weren't labeled quite right. The column to the left says project cost with bituminous roadway restoration. That should say roadway reconstruction. And what we were looking at in the past, when you were looking at a decentralized system, you may recall this from going through your budget and your CIP. There were dollars to reconstruct portions of Halsted and Farm Hill, and I believe there also were some assessments associated with that. And that was a project that was a side project of the water main. It gives you a way to reconstruct those roadways and not put that on the water user. The column to the right is restoring the roadway, which is similar to what the centralized plan had. You would take up half the roadway to put the water main in, and then you would just restore the roadway to the section in which it was removed. So you restore it in kind. So if it's gravel, it gets the same thickness of gravel and ends on the same subgrade. Same thing, you add bituminous in class 5 underneath your roadway section and restore that to what it was prior to construction. So that's what the difference in the two columns are.
So the actual number, what I'm trying to do is compare apples to apples. Actual number is the 13,434,000, right?
Correct, and that one other thing to also keep an eye on is that the asterisk under the probable construction cost for the raw water option, which was connecting wells 3 and 4 to the water treatment facility that would be on Kings Point Road. That's not necessary to do. In fact, what we did is we looked at adding 2 new wells were about $750,000, about half of the cost to connect those 2 wells. So it's really not cost effective at this time to connect those 2 wells to the water system. Although they would still be connected because you can blend that water. I'm saying you don't have to abandon those 2 wells, but it's much more cost effective to drill 2 new wells as you had planned before. I believe the city did authorize design of 2 new wells. Those have been designed, but those have not been bid. So those are still sitting, and those were in the locations that were previously approved.
So you could do the same thing if you went to a centralized system. You could, instead of doing the connection, do the 2 new wells, leave the other 2 basically on hold until such time that you may need them.
You could do the same thing, but I don't know what costs were involved with that specifically, and that's something that we'd have to look at
Right, and that's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, are we talking steel tanks, concrete tanks here with a decentralized
If
system?
you're looking at the filters, when we're looking at the type of filter, when you're at below 1,000 gallons per minute, it's more cost effective to use steel filters. And when you hit that 1,000 gallon per minute mark, that's the time where you try to look at what's more cost effective, going to concrete or using steel. In the plan that was laid out in the decentralized system, steel was identified for both plants, the 1,000 gallon per minute plant and the 500 gallon per minute plant, and that was done for consistency, so that your operator has the same system to work with. One plant's going to be larger than the other, but that was the concept behind that.
So these are both steel tanks.
They both would have steel filters. in them.
And that's where I have a little bit of an issue, is we're comparing steel tanks to concrete tanks. And I'm sure you know, St. Bonnie just replaced their tank, their steel tank, after 14 years.
I could tell you that there's one community I worked with that decommissioned its plant in 2009. That was a steel filter. It was built in 1958. The steel filters were not in poor condition, but the rest of the plant was coming apart on it, mainly the masonry and the piping. That community built 3 water plants. It's a decentralized system. All of them were steel filters, and those are all performing just fine. One was constructed in the mid-90s, and one in the early 2000s, and the other one in about 2009. And the third one replaced the one that was built in 1958.
And that's fine. And I get that. The only thing is I would like to see the numbers for a centralized system with steel tanks. I know there's been talk about possibly not having to go up South Saunders, North Saunders, Edgewood, tear up all the streets. I think we've got an option now of possibly going through some private property. That's all I want. I just want the right numbers. We've got numbers here that are not, we're comparing apples to oranges here. Steel tanks and concrete tanks they're very different.
Well, there's a couple things. Let's first clarify. You keep interchanging filters versus tank. So, Mr. Hornby, can you maybe clarify, there's been steel filters and steel tank and concrete filters and concrete tank. Are they different?
I think
okay.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what Councilmember Van den Linde is talking about is the actual tank that contains the filter media and the underdrain system.
Okay.
Right. One's made of steel, one's made of concrete.
Yeah, so the tub on the outside is steel versus concrete.
And so if the facility were to be more than 1,000 gallons per minute, then you're saying it's recommended to go to the concrete. And that's why the centralized system was the concrete, because it was 1,500 gallons per minute.
It's generally more cost effective once you exceed that 1,000 gallon per minute to go to the concrete filters.
And then if you design it, is there a difference in design versus steel versus concrete?
And I'm not a water treatment plant specialist, but it's a different design. So if you're going to, it's not like a water main project where you can bid an alternate between steel pipe or ductile iron pipe and plastic pipe. It's not that simple. You actually have a different design for each. So you have to basically design both and bid them both to get your cost comparison if that's how you wanted to do that. But you're going to incur a lot more cost in doing so.
That would be quite expensive then, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And I guess there's one other comment. I know Brian brought this up. You had talked about the value engineering study and normally the way that operates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure if what you had said is exactly what I mean. I want to just go through it, make sure. If I remember right, WSB was our engineer, was our design engineer for the water project.
Correct.
And we decided to do a value engineering study, which is pretty normal. You have an engineering company that's doing it. You get another value engineering company that comes in and basically looks at the project. And that's what we did. We had hired Bolton Mink to look at it. They did the value engineering study. because I'm sure they hadn't planned on ever having access to this because we had an engineering company with a contract. I'm assuming what happened is they didn't foresee that W back out of the project. So now it opens up the door. When you said that's not normally the way a value engineering study works, you're correct. But normally, you don't have an engineering firm that has a contract. They don't back out of the contract in the middle of the project.
I don't think they had a contract. I
Yeah.
think they had done the feasibility study, and that's then when the value engineering report was done. And
It was right after,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor and Council, it was right after the final design had just started on the decentralized method back. It was
Right.
approved in early December of 13, and it was stopped pretty quickly. I mean, there was some discussions at subsequent council meetings in January and February and that's where the value engineering then came in that mid-February meeting or whatever. So
So
that's where we are.
They were our engineer. They were designing a decentralized system when we asked for a value engineering study.
Correct. The council made the motion to stop the final design of the decentralized
Right.
system and then go to the value engineering.
So saying that that's not normally the way it works, I mean, this was not a normal situation. I mean, once you have an engineer on staff, you've got a contract with them, your value engineering company is never going to have anything else to do with it because all they're doing is looking at the design that somebody else did.
I think staff is saying that typically, and this is very, very unusual, very, very unusual,
I agree.
to have a firm that did the value engineering study also be the firm that's doing the engineering. So what should have happened is, regardless of what WSB did, what should have happened is Bolton and Mank should have stepped aside and said, we've done the value and engineering study, this is what you hired us to do, this is what we've done, and now we're out of it. And whether WSB had said the same, the city then would have said, well, let's go out for bids. But that didn't happen. So the council should have maybe thought, well, how is this typically done? I'm not saying you should or shouldn't have, but typically a council would say, well, okay, they did the value engineering study, now they're out of it, now we take their recommendations and decide what to do with it. And if WSB had said, no, we don't want anything else to do with it, then the council should have gone to a third party. And I think that's the other reason staff is saying, well, let's go with a third party. And the other reason is just in order to go with the third party now at this point, it also hopefully just clears the slate, cleans the board, and takes all of the politics out of it. It's not the former council's decision nor the future. It's let's just wipe the slate clean. Let's start with a clean slate. Then we're not pandering to one company or the other. We're not pandering to one group of individuals over the other. It's just a clean slate. We're starting with a new, fresh firm that has no stake in the game at this point. And a firm that's highly capable of doing the job that either WSB or Bolton and Mank can do. But quite frankly, I don't want the politics. This shouldn't be about politics. This shouldn't be about what the former council did or didn't do. This should be about what is best for Minnetrista. And I think staff's recommendation will be in the best interest of Minnetrista.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, politics should have never came into this thing. This is why we're sitting here talking about this, because politics did, and that's wrong. It should have never, ever happened. You put water quality, you put politics ahead of water quality, that's wrong. And that's why when we sit here, I mean, Bolton Mink, and I don't know Bolton Mink, I don't have anybody relatives, I don't know anybody that works for him. All I know is every engineering company, every engineer I've talked to, and when I've asked them, who do you go to? Who is the go-to people as far as water in this state? It keeps coming back with the same name. And I want the best people that we can get. Our residents deserve the best people that we can get. And we've already spent roughly $200,000 with Bolton Mink. And I know it's been said, well, some of that can be recouped. Well, some of it can. 100% of it, I don't think so. because any engineering firm, any construction firm that comes in, you start working off other people's numbers, you're gonna get in trouble. You
But
have to
it's-
do this yourself.
But Mr. Vanderlinde, what I'm hearing you say is that you want to go to the centralized system because we spent $200,000 already, and quite frankly, that's not a good idea, because the centralized system, we absolutely know that it's going to be close to 20 million, and we also know we can't afford that.
That's
And-
not what I said.
Okay. So, you know, if you want to go with a firm that knows our system, then it would be WSB, because they know our water system inside and out. And if you want to go with a firm that knows water and that knows how to construct these things, either one is good. I mean, Bolton and Maine can do it, WSB can do it, but there are firms out there that are very, very, very good. And
I agree
you know,
with you.
so I'm just saying, level the playing field. This is a recommendation that staff came up with, and I think they're trying to placate everyone and still get a good, high-quality project completed. And I think there's a lot of things that happened over the past couple of years that are, you know, everybody kind of has some questions about it. And again, this would level the playing field. We could start with this clean slate, and we could get this project done in an affordable, timely manner. And I think that's what staff wants, and I think that's what we all want.
I agree with you, and that's why I started out with the conversation of, I don't really care, I just want this fixed. But I want to make sure that we know the numbers, you know. Like I say, you know, we're talking this 19, I don't know, or 20, but it's 19.5 million came up with. That's with roughly 2 to 3 miles of road reconstruction. We may have an option where we don't have to do that. And
That's a good point. That's a good point.
and we're just throwing
yep.
that out the window. We're
Well,
not even looking into it.
I did ask Mr. Hornby about that this afternoon. Maybe can you kind of talk to us about that? Because the decentralized system, you do have to go down Farm Hill, Halsted, just like Mr. Vanderlinde said. And what are the options there?
At least in that particular part, that is similar in both situations, other than when you get to a certain point on Halsted, you'd cut over to where the centralized plant would be. When, you know, for instance, going through the Saunders neighborhood, you wouldn't have that, you wouldn't need to do that in a decentralized system, because you don't have to connect your north and central system, your north and south systems. You don't need to connect those. When it was reviewed in 2012, 2013, it was looked at as being, as not being cost effective to do that, because there was some difficult terrain to go over. The way that was put together is.
And the
as
difficult
development.
terrain being beyond North Saunders. I
Correct.
mean,
Beyond-
further north,
actually,
okay.
North of County Road 110.
Yeah.
So what you would rely on there is you can rely on development as development occurs. Keep your a trunk water main in your plan to make that connection sometime in the future. However, you do that through development process at a much lower cost rate than you would by constructing it now with the water.
Okay. I'm thinking the roads. I think this is what Mr.
Both of-
Vanderlinde was referring to, reconstructing the roads.
And with the roadways, what I just had looked at, the cost to restore the roadways was I came up with about $1.3 million for that section through the Saunders development. Now, if you move that water line out of that development, you're going to spend about another $1.2 million to extend 2 pipes through the adjacent property, and then you have to be faced with how are you going to cross the lake. You're either going to have to go to the west and go to the rail authority again, which increases your liability and your risk, because you're at the whim of another agency to whether or not your water main can stay there, or you have to cross the lake to get back over towards West Edge.
If you remember, with using, which Jen Olson came to the city and offered that, that leaves the rail authority out of it. The only two you have to deal with to get to County Road 15 is Jen Olson, Miss Olson's property, and Three Rivers. And Three Rivers already has a easement for a power line and a gas line in that same vicinity.
So you'd have to get your own easement to have autonomy in there. So you'd have to get an easement from Three Rivers Park District to run through there. Because you don't want to be in a power or a utility easement, because they, just like the rail authority, you're at their whim on whether you need to move because of one of their improvements. So there's risk to the city in doing that.
Now, that would be only applicable if it was the centralized system, right? Which
Correct.
$9 million of the centralized system is the water main.
Correct.
And so that's where, if we went with the decentralized, eliminating that route up to the north
That's a
would
large
eliminate
part of it.
2/3 of that expense, or?
When, what I looked at with staff was, we have a small public works department now. And that's gonna grow over time as the community grows. But what you're also looking at is you're adding 12 miles of water main, nearly 12 miles of water main with a centralized system. That's just to get from your wells to the plant and then back out to distribution. And there are a couple of the water mains in there which you can reuse. With a decentralized system, you have just over 2 miles of water main that you need to put in. So there's a significant difference there. You're looking at about $7.5 million that you would have available for other infrastructure. So if you're going to come back out in the future and put a water treatment facility, which the plan called for a 1,000-gallon per minute plant in Hunter's Crest and an elevated tank, that $7.5 million would cover that cost. So just to give you some impact, now you're up to 2,500 gallons per minute just in that facility, and you're still in that $20 million range. The $20 million range for the centralized system to 1,500 gallons per minute with an expandable plant. And there's also going to be cost when you need it to expand that plant above 1,500 gallons per minute. So you have to look at that overall, and I think you could see initially some of those costs were quite high, and I wasn't here for as your engineer when a lot of this was going on, and I don't know the exact amounts, but essentially right now your water plant has been reduced from about 3,000 gallons per minute in a centralized version to about 1,500 gallons per minute, and it's still at $20 million. But a large part of that is all that water main that you're having to put in. That's where that other $9.5 million comes from. To me, I look at that as liability from a public works standpoint, in that you have a very small group of people who are going to be maintaining that. That's a lot of water main to be putting in at this point. That's why I tried to explain in the January 5th meeting, was that a centralized plant, if you took St. Bonifacius as I said, it had room to expand. And they've got a centralized plant, they've got a 1 mile core, and you're going to expand out from the middle. That's great. I believe Eden Prairie did that as well. So they built a large plant and they're building out from that. When you look at Minnetrista, the development wasn't controlled as much from the center out. There's all these pockets of development. So you essentially have 4 different water systems operating somewhat independently. I'm saying 4 because you have that southwest area, Hunter's Crest, it's just got one water main that's connecting the two. So when you try to add a centralized system into a system that really is calling for a decentralized system with all these different pockets of urban area that is served by water, your cost for that centralized system is going to go up because you have to put all this trunk water main in. That's where your expense is at. It's not whether it's centralized or decentralized, it's how much water main do you want to put in the ground. And essentially that's what you're doing.
So with the decentralized, can you also phase it in? And I know you had, we were talking about doing a plant on Kings Point Road and then piping it and connecting it at Pinnacle Way, so that then the southern system, south and east, as well as the central system, will be serviced by that plant. And the central system will then also have adequate fire protection, so they have the pressure as well as the flow.
So it would be connected then to the Kings Point Tower.
Okay, and then So then there's the northern system. Could you even do that northern plant maybe a year or 2 or 3 years late down the road? I'm just thinking, trying to see if that might make sense or not. Do we need it right now? How bad is the water? And if we do it 2 years or let's say 3 years down the road, would that make more sense from a financial standpoint? I don't know.
Maybe a couple things. One of the things with the decentralized system is that you can phase in different systems if you would like to do that. With the south system and the central system, I think those have to be connected, and you also have to take in consideration you're going to need some more storage. And that was included in these estimated costs on page 92 of the agenda.
Okay.
And the plan that you had in 2003 called for that additional storage going in the Hunter's Crest area. And that's something that could still be done. If there's one of the reasons I should mention that we included it in these costs so that you could see it is that there is a shortage on your storage capacity now. So hearing that also, Bolton Mank and the centralized plant added 500,000 gallons of storage at the plant. And so you have to make up that 500,000 gallons. I believe the plan in 2012-13 called for a 700,000 gallon tank in the Hunter's Crest area. That's one thing that can still be determined with, if you decide to go out for and do some proposals and bring a third firm in. One of the tasks they can do is to do a final review of the distribution system and see what's best to have that elevated storage. Is it out in that in the Hunter's Crest area, or do you want to put it closer to Kings Point Road? It probably would work better. It works better to have your areas of storage and pressure source separated so that you have more evenly distributed pressure across your system. So you could more easily phase it. As far as the complaints that the city has had on the water quality, they have had very similar complaints on the north system as they do in the south system, although there's likely, and I don't know this for a fact, but there's likely fewer users in that area, and they haven't been as vocal as some of those in the southern system, especially in the southwest system.
Is there any cost savings doing them jointly? I mean, do you get a better rate?
I think the longer you wait for construction, the costs are going to go up.
Okay.
From what we're seeing in the marketplace, construction, unless we have another recession,
Don't say that.
you likely won't see the construction costs falling.
Okay. Okay. So it's better to do them now.
And
maybe?
then also from a financial review, there are a couple of things we talked to at a staff level on, if you have one area that is has a water rate for treated water, what do you do with the one that doesn't yet? And you have to look at how you might balance that, or how you address that as a policy. That's
Okay.
one thing you may have to also look at.
Mr. Grimm?
Yeah, I'll keep this at a real macro level. I think if I would recommend doing it all at once, both the southern and north. If we can do something for 11, 12 to 14, 15 million, I think we can, as I have on here on page 99 of the packet, I think you can do it and have rate increases of 3 to 6, 7% a year, which I think people would find manageable, versus trying to, do then another phase of it 2 to 3 years down the road. I think you would just want to
Okay.
do it at once, I guess, in a real.
I just thought again, if there's cost savings in doing it all at once, which it sounds like there might be, it would make sense to do both then.
Well,
Yeah.
my primary concern, and as Paul mentioned, is that the majority of the complaints are coming from Hunter's Crest. And so whatever system we put in, we need to make sure that that area, in my opinion, gets addressed first. Now, granted, we know that even if it's installed, it's going to take 6 months, a year, whatever, before they really have clear flowing water, because the pipes are going to have to get
Right.
cleaned out, or time for the buildup to flow out. But, and I think that Painters Creek has issues, but it's my understanding that they more kind of ebb and flow. It's not so consistently bad. And, but if it's cost effective to do it all at once due to the financing, then that would make sense. I have two questions. One is, and we're talking about two pieces here. We're talking about centralized versus decentralized, and going out for bid. If we were to go out to bid, I don't think there is, but I'd like to pose the question still. We know that construction contractors, they're way backed up, or it's hard to find because of how the economy affected them, and a lot of them went out of business. Is there any issue similar to that with engineering firms and their capacity to take on a project? And I know that we're not up against the wall with the financing that was going to be available through March 31st, but...
I think that's a question for Mr. Hornby.
I did talk to a couple of firms just to kind of gauge that, and I talked to 3 different firms, and all 3 of them had capacity to do that work now.
Mm-hmm. And then my other question is, with the one route that we were talking about going through Farm Hill, I know that, I don't know, well, as far as the bike path, the Three Rivers bike path that was going to be going through that area, 21 of those neighbors signed a petition that they were against the bike path and the policies that you won't take eminent domain for a bike path. I assume that water treatment might be different. I don't know.
I talked to Mr. Hornby about that, and you were saying that you could do directional boring in areas, so you could maybe in the Farm Hill area, so you don't have to tear out the pavement and then redo the pavement and then have that issue? I mean, can you do directional boring there?
And I think in part, I think the question perhaps was whether an individual property owner would want to sell an easement to the city or to the park district for a regional trail versus perhaps selling an easement for water main only.
Yeah.
And in that area too, and you may have recalled from the preliminary design work that Bolton Mike was working on, they're going through that same area. That's one of the common areas that we have to get pipe across. And there was a discussion about having it combined with the trail, and there was a layout that had, especially on one parcel, and I don't recall the property owner's name, but there was quite a bit of fill that was going in there. I think there was 10 feet plus of fill going in there. From an engineering standpoint, and I know they would look at this as well, when you start putting that much fill in there, you're going to have some settlement over time. And you really don't want to put that water main in that embankment until it settles out, at least for a year. Or you have to surcharge it to make sure that you get some compaction, sooner. So there's some way of doing that, but I think you have some risk in putting it in that, actually in the trail or near the bottom of the trail, because you're putting all this material on top. You get settlement of the material around it. Very real situation is you can have your water main pull apart underneath because of the weight of the soil above. You don't plan for that. I've seen it happen to contractors before, and obviously it's not fun for them to deal with. It's probably more realistic, even if we're working with the park district and they have a trail on one parcel or on another parcel, is to have a separate easement for the water main. And I know that's not a cooperative method with the park district, but from a constructability standpoint, it certainly provides a lot less risk in your water system. So you probably are still looking at acquiring an easement to go through a parcel or two for the...
But on Farm Hill, I could be wrong, Ms. Thole, but on Farm Hill, we have right-of-way, and we would have enough without taking extra land. It's once you leave Farm Hill and you're going across the marsh area, that's where we would need easements on private
Correct.
Property.
Correct.
And you would need that whether it's the centralized
Correct.
or decentralized system. And my comment before was, as it goes down Farm Hill Road and circle, okay, that then you could do a directional boring, so you're not disrupting
Correct.
the property owners or the road.
Correct, and I don't recall if, but there's quite a bit of directional boring in some of those road areas with the centralized plant as well.
Right.
I don't recall if that specific one was, but you could certainly do that too. With the limited access going to the north through Halsted, especially on Farm Hill, you could certainly directionally bore that.
Well, in representing the situation as fairly or accurately as possible, I'm the council representative on the Parks Commission, so was in on that meeting. But also, one of the concerns of the residents was the amount of traffic that the bike trail was going to bring through. It would be 185,000 residents when it was fully operational, which would be years down the road. 185,000, not residents, but users. And so their concern more was those people coming in and out and that sort of thing, where to put in a water main, you're going to come in, you're going to disrupt things for a while, but it's not going to create additional visitors
Right.
to the neighborhood.
Right.
And oh, sorry. So.
I think what we're going to do, we have to take a break because we have to change the tape, and then we're going to come back and make a decision and move forward. So take a 5-minute break,
Thank you.
and we'll be back. Thanks.
Sir? Oh, yep.
Mr. Bull? Sorry. All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and we're talking about the water treatment. And I think staff is looking for direction this evening. And I think we need to give it to them. And I think we need to do that for our residents. So,
Okay,
so Mr. Christians.
thank you. I wanted to kind of sit back and listen to everybody's comments and so forth. And again, like Mark, I want to make sure that we do the right thing and the best thing for the users and looking at things long-term. After being involved in this over the last year and a half, I remember the meeting we had at the Public Safety Building in May, where all the users were invited to attend and kind of discuss the different options that were going to be available. And there were a number of comments that were taking place back and forth, and of course I kept thinking to myself, the easiest thing in the world would be to do nothing. But that wouldn't be right. And after looking at different things, I have several concerns now. In fact, I'm a little bit more confused right now as we keep continuing on and I'm hearing comments. I'm thinking of the comment that Mark just made earlier tonight about comparing apples and oranges, that we're not comparing, the numbers are not being compared. Value engineering study was brought in, Bolton and Mink was brought in to do a value engineer study, and the question, or the things that were their direction was given to them, was let's look at something that's going to take us out to 2030, not 2016 or 18, but let's look at something at 2030. So the direction that they were given was a long-term direction, which I really do believe in the long-term direction that the centralized system would have been the system way to go. Now, we talk about the directional boring. Directional boring obviously is less disturbing to the neighborhoods that we're involved in. I think one of the issues, and I think there was a mistake made by the way South Saunders was going into to do a survey. I think that should have been done, and I think it should have been done looking at as much directional boring as could possibly be. From two standpoints. One, for the disturbance and some of the issues that would have been created by our residents. The other concern I have is comparing cost. If we look at the decentralized system, and I'm not saying that's not the way to go because we're phasing in. What's the result of that going from 2000 and at 2030? In other words, that's kind of the plan that Bolton and Mink had looked at. And I have a lot of confidence in Bolton and Mink also, only from the standpoint because they've done a lot of systems. WSB will tell you that they haven't done that many water treatment systems.
I think that's incorrect.
Is that incorrect? Well, thank you. Well, that was my impression, so.
I don't know where you would have heard that.
Okay. The other thing I have and concern that I have in comparing apples with apples is in the numbers that were put together. With a centralized system, we already have the land that has been paid for by the water fund and sewer fund that's sitting right here that's available to be used. Now, granted, the cost of running the pipe and so forth, obviously I didn't realize how much difference there would be. But as Mark pointed out earlier also, what kind of savings would there be involved by having a resident, Jen Olson, being willing to work with us? Is there dollar savings there? Is there less disruption to the residents that need it? So there's questions there that I have that I'm concerned about. And again, I'm not pointing one direction to centralize or decentralize. I want to do what's best for our residents, but also something that's going to take us to 2030, which was the reason and purpose in the first place for the value engineer studying done by Bolton and Mink. So with that, I want to express my concerns.
Those are some good legitimate concerns. So let's have Mr. Hornby address a couple of them to start. So one, the 2030 plan for the centralized system. How far out will our decentralized system take us if we spend $13.4 million today?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to back up and look at what the apples-to-apples comparison that you have in the two cost estimates that are before you for the two different systems. The one thing that you're looking at is you're looking at what does 1,500 gallons per minute provide you.
And so the centralized and the decentralized are both 1,500 gallons per minute total.
Correct.
The centralized is 1,500 gallons per minute in one location. The decentralized is 500 gallons in the north and 1,000 in the south.
Correct.
Okay.
So both these systems get us through 2030 is the correct answer.
Correct.
Okay.
A bit macro, yes.
So both systems do the same in terms of future planning
They
and so on.
provide you the exact same capacity in the comparison that Brian has provided you.
Okay. And then another concern that Mr. Christians brought up was that we already have the land. However, I think Mr. Christians, and maybe Paul can weigh in here, the amount of money that it would take to pipe the water line, to put the pipe in the ground from that location to the nearest, if you will, urban area, far, far outweighs the cost of the land.
Well, maybe I should back up. The decentralized system doesn't have any site acquisition as it was set in 2013. So you had a site for the north system, you have a site for the south system, you had a site for the storage, and it was all on city-owned property. With the exception of the north system, I believe there was some kind of arrangement made with the school district. I'm not privy to what the exact arrangements were with that.
It was free at the time.
But my understanding was it was a cooperative effort on that land side.
And maybe we can still work that out, maybe.
So the land was all public.
Okay.
The only easements that were needed were to get the water main from Kings Point Road to Farm Hill Drive.
And we'd have to do that with the centralized system as
Correct.
well. Okay,
Correct.
so the land now, that's kind of been resolved. And then the dollars, and I know Mr. Vanderlinde as well as Mr. Christians pointed out that we're not comparing apples to apples, and I think you're correct. But you can't compare apples to apples when you're talking a centralized system versus a decentralized system. It's two different systems. So it would be hard to compare apples to apples. Can somebody weigh in on this for me?
Madam Mayor and Council, I would think the what we have on page 99 in the packet is what we've done is as Mr. Hornby talked about, the gallons per minute capacity of 1,500, whether you split it 1,500 in one site or 1,000 in one and 500 on the other, are enough capacity to get us through 2030 based on our projected growth. So basically the 13.5 million versus the 20 million are apples to apples comparison in my mind through 2030.
Okay. Does that answer
Yeah, thank you
some
very
of the
much.
question?
The only other thing I had in the packet, in our packet, Brian, you listed advantages and disadvantages, which
Yep.
was very good. And I also have going back, all the way back to when the survey, you may call it, was done. And they're very similar, advantages and disadvantages. And again, it's a concern. The disadvantage of a decentralized system is obviously you're dealing with more than one plant, so the maintenance of operating in the maintenance, I would think, would be more to operate 2 or 3 plants
Well,
than one plant.
The one comment
might-
I would make to that, Mr. Christians, though, is that that's probably offset by the 9.5 million of water main and all the 9 to 12 miles of water main potential to break. And if
Okay,
you have a-
I
if
just
you have
want
a
to
water
point it
main
out because
break-
it was also shown in the packet as an advantage, the advantages and
Yep,
disadvantages. So-
yeah, and there is, with the decentralized plant, there is, the multiple facilities maintained, but I think that's offset at least by, the potential breaks in the water main, and then when you have that cost obviously is a lot higher than just maybe a little more staff time or a little more chemicals or whatever it is than having 2 plants or whatever, at least in my mind, I guess Mr. Hornby or.
So if we were to use, as Mark stated earlier also, if we looked at the directional boring on some of the areas, and if we looked at the use of some of the land that Jen Olson was going to work with us on, does it lower the cost
That would be
enough
a
to
question for Mr. Hornby.
to make a difference?
I
Would it
think
lower the cost enough to make a difference?
You might swing $1 million one way or another. And that's about, and the reason I say that is because now you have to look at how you're going to, from a $20 million project, you're gonna have to put 2 pipes in the ground, and I wish I could put this on screen, but once you go through the Olson property, you're either at the rail property, crossing a lake, or you're going through private property again that isn't owned by the Olsons. I don't see where you're going directly to the county road.
Okay.
So there's more easement that's got to be acquired than that, or you have to use the trail to get where you're going.
And you still have the cost of putting the pipe in the ground.
Correct, and then you have a much larger water crossing if you were to cross the lake itself.
So are you saying it may not even be, I don't want to say feasible, but maybe not a good idea to even go through the Olson property because of the lake?
One of the things that you, from a public works standpoint, you've got to maintain water main that goes underneath a wet area. And I'll give you a very real example of a community that I worked with a firm that I was at. They were trying to figure out why they couldn't hold water in their elevated tank in the middle of winter. They knew they had a leak, they didn't know where they had a leak. They had about a 700-foot-long stretch of water main that crossed a wetland. One of the things that they realized after a few weeks is that the wetland wasn't frozen. It was because they were draining their elevated tank into the wetland for weeks. And then to try to fix that pipe in that wetland, they ended up having to do is reroute around it. So rather than trying to fix that pipe, because well, number one, you can't get equipment out there to fix it. So you end up having to relay that pipe. So either go around the wetland, or in some of the cases, in some very long crossings, you may have to just put a new line in parallel or within the existing main that's leaking. So you essentially put a heavier structural liner, or you burst the pipe when you run a new pipe through. So you end up having to replace the pipe. How much pipe are you going to replace? You're going to put 1,000 feet of pipe in on a water crossing, you're easily going to exceed $100,000 to do that. So you have that liability in some of these long water crossings. Some of the terrain in Minnetrista and the way the water systems are, whether you connect them, whether it's a centralized system or it's a decentralized system, you have to make some crossings. I would like to try, as your engineer, to try to minimize that as much as possible. So that, again, looking at a decentralized plant, you've got one of those crossings to use, and that's the one going from Kings Point over to Farm Hill.
Okay. Does that answer some of your questions?
And
Okay.
this is kind of why I really would like to explore all the options and get the right numbers, because you're saying on the Olson property, you'd have to cross underneath the lake.
unless you tell me where else you're going with it.
Well, she owns property on both sides of the
Well,
rail.
I think, Mr. Vanderlinde, though, in all due respect, a couple of things, okay? Just consider this. One, staff, there was a feasibility study done that the city paid $60,000 for. They paid a professional firm to do that. They came back with a recommendation. A value engineering study was done. Staff has looked at this. I mean, this thing has been studied and studied and studied to death. At some point, we need to take staff's recommendations and we need to put our trust in the professionals and in our staff that they are giving us the right information and the correct information with which we can make the best possible choice and decision. And so far, they've done that, and they've come back time and again with more information and with more things, and I think we're at that point right now. We need to move forward, or either just don't do anything at all, which I think would not be appropriate. So to say, you know, we need more information, no, we've got all the information. I showed you that stack of information that I've read through, and if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend that you read it. It's fabulous reading. It only takes about 3 days. So anyway, I'm just...
I was here during all that information got put together. You don't have to tell me about it. I'm just saying, I don't believe that these numbers are where it's at.
Whatever the numbers are, we already know that the decentralized is less expensive. Now, whether it comes out at the 11.9 or 13.4, and we already know that the centralized is going to be close to the 20 million. Those, I don't think those numbers are going to fluctuate hugely. They might fluctuate some, but regardless, you're never going to end up with the centralized being $20 million. That's a $7 million fluctuation.
Centralized at 20 million.
The decentralized, right.
No, I'm not saying that it's going to. I'm just saying that, you know, 20.
So what's your issue then? You know,
$20 million, that number, the 19.5 million, is planned on digging up about 2 to 3 miles of existing road, South Saunders, North Saunders. And it's been talked about where you can do part of the street and this and that. Well, you've got houses on both sides of the street.
it's not going to reduce the price by $7 million.
We don't know what it's going to
Oh,
do.
come on, please. Just, I mean, okay, let's ask Mr. Hornby. Let's say 2 miles of roadway, is it going to reduce the price by $7 million?
I can tell you is when I looked at going through Saunders versus not going through Saunders, you might save $1.2 million.
Okay. But you still have the cost of going, let's say, on Miss Olson's property, so you still have that cost.
And the offsetting cost is that now instead of, if you don't go through the Saunders neighborhood, you have to run 2 pipes on the Olson property.
Okay,
So you have a 20-inch water main and a 12-inch water main that you'd have to run through that property. So now you've doubled the number of pipes that have to go through because you have to have your raw water line and your distribution line coming through that system, through that land. So
Okay.
now you don't, in the Saunders neighborhood, part of the reason for using that is, number one, we had the right of way, so we had the right to use that property. The city has the right to use that land to do this. Bolton Mink was looking at trying to save some dollars by reusing the distribution line because it was large enough for your raw water line, but they had to run a new trunk line. But in order to do that, then they had to switch services over from what was the old water line and switch over to the new trunk line. And so there was some costs in there, and that when you go through and do that much work, you do disturb a lot of roadway. So you could figure you're going to use that whole roadway, and that was one more costly item in going through that neighborhood, but the city could certainly do that. But when you take that out of there, now you don't have your raw water line going through there, and you don't have your trunk water line going through there, so they both have to go somewhere else. So now you're taking those 2 pipes up through either through the Olson property, across the rail, and following the rail system up and going north to the county road. There's a tremendous amount of 2 pipes that you have to do and run through that route. So it's not,
yeah.
I don't think it's near the cost savings that you're looking for, if it's a savings at all.
Okay. Okay. All right, staff?
I
Mr.
don't know if
Barone?
anybody has any other comments they'd like to provide to the city council?
The only thing I'm gonna say is, it was my understanding that Bolton and Mink was gonna try to directional bore as much as possible. So I don't know all the specifics on that, but in the point about Saunders and that, it was my impression that as they could, they would do directional bore and not affect the streets as much as possible. So I'd just throw that out there.
The number that you came up with, Brian, on the 13 million, 14 million, where'd that number come from? Is that from Bolton and Mink, or where'd it come from?
That number was updated by WSB from, they had, had the decentralized proposal back, in 2013. So they updated for current construction.
Been updated since 2013?
It has been updated now.
Okay. Has there been a decentralized number that has ever been given to you or talked about with Bolton and Mink?
They did their original decentralized number, and this goes back to when the survey went out. The number that they had for the decentralized method, which it doesn't make sense to me, was more than the centralized method. And so when that survey went out, I even put by the centralized, because I was a centralized believer this summer too. It sounded great, and stuff, but I look at the cost. I deal in facts or whatever. Sure. So when their decentralized method, the last one we got was from this last summer, was 16, 17 million. It was more than the centralized, which I think, has played out to not be totally correct, So, and that's where when the survey came back and everyone said, hey, let's do the centralized gravity, I think most people were just looking at the one that was the most cost-effective and affected their rates the least. If you would have, I think I mentioned this at the meeting a month ago, if you would send out that survey now with
Which we don't want to do.
With the information that we have, I think you'd get a much different answer. People want the most cost-effective, less intrusive solution that'll make their water not have rust and manganese or whatever in it. That's what they want.
That's what they're after.
That's how they want. They don't care if it's central, multi-central, decentral.
I agree.
So.
I agree with you on that. The only other thing I had is, there was a feasibility study done, and I thought it was $90,000 that was paid to WSB, and then of course we spent another ton of money with Bolton and Mink on the value study and all the things that have been done. That's an awful lot of money. I certainly would hope that can be used and utilized.
I would think so. I mean, it's not proprietary. I mean, it's ours that we own, or what. I mean, or as far as the reports that we've gotten stuff. So it's from staff perspective. I think Mike Brony. Maybe I'll let him talk to it. I think we wouldn't start over by any means, or we would, obviously take any preliminary design or even final design work that we have so far and give that to whoever we'd select to carry this project forward and say, council has, before it was more options and where are we going to go. If the council's, we've done a lot of research, done a lot of legwork. If we say we want to do a decentralized method, here's where we think they should be located, here's where we think the pipes should go, they should be able to take it and run with it and do the final design. That's at least my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about on the front end.
On that proposal, how would you approach that, or how would you do that? I'm a little confused about that. I mean, I'm just thinking some of the nightmare horror stories I've had where I've been asked to go in and clean up somebody else's thing, get involved in somebody else's issues and problems that have been already started, and it gets a little scary.
I understand that concern. And what I was trying to convey a little earlier, and had a little talk with Mr. Vanderlinde a little earlier, there's no value lost by the work that's been done. I mean, the very first thing that was done was was when WSB made the proposal to the city back in, late 2013. Bolton and Mink entered the picture not by staff's choosing. I mean, the money we spent with them wasn't anything that your city staff recommended that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That was strictly motivated by the work of previous council members, not the city staff. You're asking us, and you stated a little earlier about wanting to do the right thing. I'm not trying to be glib, Mr. Christians. To do the right thing, you should listen to your city staff and let us proceed forward with doing a decentralized plan for our water treatment in this city. That, I think, would be doing the right thing. And we can argue about Miss Olson's property, save $500,000 $1 I don't care. I don't think it's, as Mayor Whalen just said, I don't think it's going to get us that extra $7 million. It's just not.
Okay.
We've been dinking around with this a long time.
Yeah.
I essentially lost a year pursuing the reverse osmosis and the Bolton and Mink solutions. They're not feasible. They're too costly. We owe it to our residents to provide them with good quality water. And I think we can do it. It's all gonna cost a lot of money, no matter what. It's like buying a new car. That costs a lot of money. How many, you want a sunroof, you want spinning tire, wheels, you can get all the bells and whistles. We don't need all the bells and whistles. We just need to deliver basic water to our residents. Hopefully, as we grow, we'll add more users. We
You
need to
answered
expand,
one of
we
the
can do that.
main concerns that I had, and that was 2030, so we don't have to go through
Yeah.
these issues again. And that
Right.
was one of my main concerns from the beginning, and you answered that question, and that was a big concern of mine, so thank you.
And I guess just to piggyback on Mike's point, I think as far as going forward, it would be an RFP process. City of Minnetrista looks to do decentralized water treatment plant project. Here's our specs, or however it works, or that type of thing. Here's what we've, got, to date as far as through our preliminary design and some of our, even what final design was started, and provide that information to them, and they're professionals. They should be able to run with that. And
Yeah.
And as Mr. Hornby indicated a little bit ago, there's plenty of firms out there that are ready to go. So I don't think this is a months thing. I mean, weeks is probably better than months. I'm sure it's gonna take a little bit of time to put all the paperwork together, get it back in front of this council for approval. Yes, go staff, go ahead and do it. Create the timeline, we'd be able to give you some sort of indication of that. But I think to continue to talk about centralized, decentralized, and all that stuff, I think we've gotten to the point now where I think we need to move forward.
So basically, staff, tonight, you're looking at council approval and recommendation to move forward with an RFP, basically, for I'm going to suggest a decentralized plan. And
I
then
think
you
so,
can
yeah.
add in, and then the RFP, or when we get, so the raw water option connecting wells 3 and 4, that can be a separate line item, a separate bid
Sure.
item, can't it?
If you so desire,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think we're looking at, I've heard kind of 3 different areas we're looking to put water treatment. The centralized area, the Kings Point Road area, the northeast corner, section, and then also with the Hunter's Crest area, there may be a small something over there. We could look at any mix and match potentially and come back with, here's what it is with 2 of them, 3 of them, none of them, 1 of them,
And I think you're asking more specifically as far as that option C on page 99, whether we would do that connection for wells 3 and
Right.
4, sort of build
That's the
bid
one
that
I
as an
was talking-
alternate type thing, or,
Right
or
now-
with it or without it, or.
Right.
or-
Right now, from what the information we have and from staff's recommendation is to connect Hunter's Crest with the Kings Point Road water treatment plant, and then connect that to the central district. So you'd have the central and the southern districts connected, and then you would do a standalone northern plant. And then at some point in time down the road, you could always add, if you wanted to, another treatment plant or some other facilities down by Hunter's Crest. And that might be in your 2030 and beyond plan,
Sure.
whatever.
Because we know there's going to be growth in that area.
Right.
The other thing that I've mentioned, I don't know if I've mentioned it too, to tell you the truth these days, but the other thing that I mentioned when the council directed me a month ago to go talk with Mound and St. Bonnie, one of the things we could consider, even though if you recall from the newspaper article this past Friday, that Mound is essentially, when they built all their lift stations, they call them pump houses or whatever in the paper, how they refer to it, but nonetheless, their goal back when they were putting in all this was to be a decentralized city. I mean, they were talking in the paper, their city engineer, who I believe is a Bolton Mank engineer, by the way, was talking about how they were going to be a decentralized city. Different areas of town were going to be on different systems.
Yeah.
One of the things we can do is we're working on that northeast plant. I don't know what situation they're going to be in 3 years, 5 years. I'm sure they don't even know. But I think they still have it on their radar to do water treatment. We could explore during these options that what if we built that plant so it was either built for expansion and oriented such, so if our neighbors to the east Mound were interested in partnering with us, expanding their water treatment, maybe they could partner with us. I don't know if it's feasible for them or not, but we could certainly look at that as we build. And, remember the talk last summer about a regional treatment plant. Mound isn't set up to do a regional treatment plant. They're doing decentralized.
I
St.
wouldn't
Bonnie's
mind
too
doing
small,
that.
but we could ask them, here, these are possible options for that northeast or that north part of the plant.
I wouldn't mind doing that as long as there's no additional
It's just no cost for us, right?
Yeah, because we know right now, they said, no, they're not
Right.
interested. But, I mean, to certainly say, have enough space or whatever where it could be expanded down the road is long-term planning regardless of whether Mound comes on board or not.
Build it like this, you couldn't, but if
Yeah.
you build it like that, you
Yeah.
could. I don't know
So-
who will ask there, whoever the
Right.
engineer ends up being.
Okay, so with that, I'm looking for a motion to authorize staff to put together an RFP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but staff, you would bring back the RFP then? Or what process do you want this to go through?
A very good question. I'm gonna turn to Mr. Hornby and exactly what we would do first, do second kind of thing.
Well, I would think that, we want to put together the scope of services that you're going to want to authorize out for the RFP. So I think we would want to bring that back to the council.
So to
Okay.
make sure that when we go out for RFP, you're okay with this is what we're going on.
Okay, so you're going to bring back a scope of services for a decentralized plan such as we've talked about tonight. And then at that meeting, which would be the next meeting possibly, in 2 weeks?
I will see if I can get it for that meeting.
Okay. And then we'll review that, and then at that point, we would authorize, if we're okay with that, then we would authorize staff to put together an RFP and go out for bids for the design services,
Final.
Correct.
Yeah, basically final design.
for the final design.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to authorize staff to, help me out here, Mr. Barone, it's getting late.
Yep. Scope of services,
Scope of services.
utilizing WSB to help us put together a scope of services for decentralized water treatment.
Yeah. It's basically a scope
Yeah.
of services for an RFP process. Correct.
Okay. Do you understand what we're, okay. Okay, do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Are there further questions, discussion? This will probably be back to us in 2 weeks, if not for sure at the March
Second, whatever.
first meeting. Okay. All right, then, any other?
The only discussion, I just want one comment. I'm really glad that this is going to get fixed. I think we've got a good engineering firm on the project right now. I don't agree with going with a different engineer, but so be it. I'm just glad this water's going to get fixed. That's what their residents need.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Vanderlinde. You're right. Okay. With that, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
2 opposed. Motion passes. Okay. Moving on. Thank you very much. I have to get back to my agenda now. I believe, sorry guys, I'm not at my agenda. I believe we're under administrative items, approving the claims. Any questions there? Otherwise, motion to approve?
Motion to approve the claims?
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second to approve the claims?
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the claims as presented. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. So we move on to our reports. So first off, Friday and Saturday, I was at the League conference. And actually, I had a chance to sit with new Mayor Mark Wegscheidt. We had some nice conversations. Good to get to know him a little bit better. And he just basically reiterated what was in the paper and what staff has said. But nice to get to know him a little bit better. Of course, I met many other mayors and council members from other cities. The main topic for my session, it was on engaging the public. Basically engaging and trying and communicating with the residents in our city, and I felt so appropriate because we talked about that at our last meeting, and I'll be bringing those ideas forward once we've gone through our strategic planning and we've goal-setting session, and also talking to staff with those ideas. So I won't bore you tonight because it is getting late, but it was very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to engaging the citizens of Minnetrista more in our city. Northwest League, I'll be going to that. I do have a meeting with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District this week, and I also will be going to a meeting, attending their February 18th meeting, and again, I'll bring back some more reports regarding that. I have reached out to the Gillespie Center, to their, I think it's a new immediate past president, and we've been trying to coordinate a time to meet. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm hopeful that we can meet in the next few weeks, and that they would be coming then to the council with a presentation maybe sometime in March. Oh, I think there's some other things, but for now I'll pass it on.
There was no, well, I reported on the Parks Commission the last time I was here. The only update would be we will be meeting next month as well. Oftentimes it meets quarterly, but we'll be meeting to discuss some options on the Gillespie Park and other topics.
I have none.
Okay. Ms. Martinson?
I also attended the leadership conference, and I highly recommend it for any other new council members in the future. We went over comprehensive training, and it was excellent. The networking was great. I also got to meet a lot of the neighboring new council members and mayors, and they all have problems, which is kind of refreshing for us to hear. And what else? These Pioneer Sarah Creek Watershed, David and I spoke about this earlier too. They did not get the 10-year plan approved through Bowser. So it is going back to 6-year, and our next meeting is on the 19th of February, and it will be a very interesting meeting. So I will report back to you on that.
Thank you. Mr. Christians?
Well, on March 7th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. will be the Moonlight Trail. So if you'd like to enjoy the night, walk the Moonlight Trail. It starts at the Minnehaha Drive-In and goes all the way down through up till Gale Woods. And there's little, what do you call them, lights that are set up along the way, and the businesses that are participating are setting up a way, and I've gone the last couple of years, and it's kind of entertaining, kind of fun if the weather's not too cold.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see everybody out there on March 7th, Saturday night, March 7th, and walking the trail.
Hours on that again?
It starts at 6 p.m.
Okay.
To 9 p.m. And it starts off to do the whole thing, to get the whole effect of it with all the businesses that participate. You start at Minnehaha Drive-In and walks. It's a long walk all the way to
Minnetonka.
I'm
Minnetonka
sorry.
Drive. That's okay.
Minnetonka Drive-In.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
And then it ends up at Gale Woods Farms.
That reminds me, two things. I did attend the Planning Commission meeting. I took January, and that was very interesting. Not a lot of planning things. Mr. Bull's items were there, and those were discussed in depth, but just a good connection. I also mentioned that we'd like to have a planning / council joint meeting sometime, and we're also planning on doing that with the Park Commission as well. And then Mr. Brony and I attended the Fire Advisory Board meeting. You were out of town, so we stepped in for you. And we're also going to be having another meeting with them
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday, possibly.
And then we'll, yeah.
You're going to confirm that, though, after you talk to Candace? And
I did by email tonight.
Oh, you did?
Okay.
Yeah,
So we're set?
Thursday, 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock
Okay.
Thursday.
So,
Okay.
City Hall.
Mount City Hall.
so
Okay.
we'll be attending that, and some interesting, fun things going on there, and we'll report back
Okay.
at our next meeting. With that, Mr. Brony?
I think first on the list is Mr. Falls is going to talk about the bow hunting issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brony. Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you recall, we have been discussing the, amending our bow hunting zone, or our hunting zone, rather, as it pertains to the Woodland Cove development. And specifically, in regard to that, I did have a chance to meet with Mr. Gregg, since he is the only real, actual resident at this time that this affects. And so the conversation, I think, went well. We met for approximately 30 to 40 minutes. I told him that I would carry forward his concerns to you as a council, and I told him that, certainly with development, there is going to be some change, and that's inevitable, and he was pretty accepting of that. But I did tell him that, I would certainly keep him in the loop and that I couldn't promise him anything at this point. So just kind of, staff has been doing some research, and that was a valuable piece because I think knowing what he wants is important. And essentially it is that, it's his desire to have the city rezone everything around him to no hunting and to leave his 2.5 acres as it is. And there are going to be, I think, some challenges with that, but I told him that I would carry forward his message to you and that I would keep him in the process, in the loop as we move forward. So with that, that's about all I have to present tonight. I think David and I have looked at the property, including some of the development maps there as to where future development will be, and I think there are some issues that are kind of coming forward that we weren't necessarily aware of before. At least for myself. I know there's going to be houses located directly to the south of Mr. Gregg's property, to the north of whatever that new street is. And so that's, I think, going to be a difficult piece to this. But I guess I should mention also, when I reviewed city code regarding this matter, there's a lot of talk in there regarding hunting waivers, which we currently give to a couple of residents for the purposes of hunting. It's different than what we're talking about here with the practice. And with that, a very large piece of that is discussing that activity with surrounding landowners. And so I think, to be fair, we're going to need to bring, I guess it's going to be Matt and me to the table at some point to hear them out on this issue as well, because I don't believe there are any actual residents in those new homes. There's homes standing there, but there's no residents in them yet. I assume that could change at any time, but certainly those people will need to be heard in this process as well. And part of the issue will be, this is going to be, Mr. Gregg's property is clearly going to be highly visible to a number of residents, as well as passing traffic on Kings Point Road and also that new road that's just to the south of him, leading into the development. So those are going to be some of the challenges we face. This is just meant to be an update tonight. I just wanted to let you know that I did reach out to Mr. Gregg. He was very good about stopping by to meet with me and discuss this. He's very interested in preserving his right to practice there. We talked about the hunting versus the practice. He's not really interested in hunting on his property, which is what I suspected. It is really his pastime, and his passion is bow hunting, and as such, he likes to be able to practice on his property. But we'll continue to do research and bring this matter back to you when we have, I guess, some more.
Yeah, and it would be nice to maybe bring it back at a work session so we can discuss it a little bit more, so.
Absolutely, and I
'cause
think.
we'll have questions and everything.
Absolutely, and at that, I'll certainly be prepared to offer all kinds of, I guess, statistical information regarding bows and how far arrows travel and all that sort of stuff, as well as maybe information from other involved parties, and we can go from there.
All right. Okay.
I have a couple of items I just want to give the city council as reminders and then a question to ask. The first one, as you know, as I mentioned a little earlier in the meeting tonight, when we passed the agreement with Mr. Rapp, we have our first session scheduled for a week from today, Monday, February 9th at 3 o'clock. We'll be meeting in the training room of the public safety facility. There's also a deadline for council and staff to return in Word format, not PDF format, a questionnaire. I think it's 3 pages long. You need to return that by 5 p.m. on this Wednesday, which is February 4th. And you can email that to Mr. Rapp. He will be compiling. He wants it in Word format so he can do cut and paste and then compile your answers anonymously. So when we get together a week from today, people can see without attribution of who said what, all the issues that are going on between council and staff, and then we can start our work from there. The other thing that I have tonight for the council is, as started last year under the, I guess, unusual circumstances of the departure of Mr. Funk, we had two council members meeting with city staff, I think on the Wednesday after he left our organization. And as it turned out, those were really pretty productive meetings. And so, speaking about this with Mayor Whalen, here's how she would like to propose this be done in 2015. What she would like to do is she would like to attend every one of those since she's the mayor, and then have the remaining 4 council members each take a turn once per quarter, so you'd be basically coming once a year as a council member to participate in those mayor, council, staff, give and take sessions, forums, whatever you want to call them. I've come up with dates for each quarter. Generally, I'm shooting for the middle of the month of the middle month of the quarter, so mid-February, mid-May, mid-August, and mid-November. If you're so obliged, I'd be interested in hearing.
Give us those again, mid-February?
Yep, so I got February 25th, February 25th, May 20th, August 19th, and November 18th. And I picked those dates not because they're in the middle of the middle, but because we've avoided Memorial Day, we've avoided Thanksgiving Day, holidays. I'm trying to avoid the holiday weeks. People tend to take off. I'm also trying to stay away from our council calendar, so those dates are generally after our second meeting of the month. Sometimes we end up with a 3-week gap, most of the time not, but sometimes a 3-week gap between that second monthly meeting and the first meeting of the next month. So I think they'll work out easier for staff as well as, and these are Wednesday mornings, 9 a.m. And I think that was the exact time that we had when we started these things back last May. So I don't know if anybody has a preference over which one to go to. You want to, I'll take August, I'll take May, whatever you want to do, I'll write it down and we'll go from there.
I'll take either August or November, either one.
Anybody else up for August?
I would prefer not May or August.
Okay, so you want Feb or
I
November?
can, which one? I was going to say February or August, but I could, I didn't bring my calendar. Any of them might work out.
Yeah.
Should we just say February, or Pam, do you have?
February or May would work better for me.
So do you want to
Good.
take February?
Okay, and
Good.
what
And
would
who
work, you don't know?
Yeses on?
Any, I think any are really okay.
And Mark, you were trying to avoid the middle too, so Feb's gone, would you like November?
I think.
I got August. I'll take August or November, either or.
November's fine. Yep,
Okay,
that
so
works.
Mark will go November and Bob's. So you mean, well, Pam, you got May, or Patricia, you got May.
What's that?
You have
I
May?
have May,
Okay.
okay.
Are they 2 hours long?
Generally an hour,
Yeah.
maybe a little longer, hour and a half,
And you said that was August
If it
19th?
doesn't work.
August
you can
19th. And I'll
just
send these to
let him
you.
know.
Email.
I'll
If
email them
something
to you.
works better.
Okay. I just remembered
So the first
May
one
might
is
not
Feb
work for me,
25.
but,
Okay.
So
Um,
coming up on a couple weeks.
Pam, would May work for you?
May would work for me too.
Can you switch with Patricia?
the other one you took was what?
February.
February
Feb 25.
25th.
Okay.
So
Would that work?
Patricia's-
So Patricia will be February and Pam will be May,
Got it. Bob in August, Mark in November.
okay? And don't forget.
Very good.
All right,
And that's it. And I didn't have a chance to put into this council packet the audio system, but I did get the quotation. I haven't really delved into it, but I hope to have it on the next meeting. And I
good.
think it's good timing because I'm hearing a lot of crackling from these
Yes,
speakers. So
yes.
not only are they bad, they're getting worse. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of right in time. So.
Right. All right, sounds good. Well, do you know what time it is?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Hey, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, good. All those in favor signify with aye.
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 All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Good job, everyone. And David, I guess I'll see you in the morning.
Yes.